Hello, everyone. Welcome to Dead Time Stories. I know many of you enjoy listening to these videos as you fall asleep. So, before you drift off, I'd love for you to leave a comment letting me know where in the world you're tuning in from. And if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and subscribe. All right, now let's get comfortable, relax, and dive into tonight's story. The road out to Coldwater Hollow had no business being that quiet. Rain had passed earlier, leaving the asphalt slick and smelling faintly of wet pine. Sarah's wipers swept across the windshield in slow, lazy arcs, the rubber squeaking each time. It was just past 9, but the clouds overhead made it feel much later. Her headlights caught only the winding strip of road ahead, flanked on both sides by thick woods that seemed to lean in toward her car as if eavesdropping. She had told herself, twice, that she wouldn't do this, that she wouldn't get pulled into another one of Daniel's messes. But the voicemail he left that morning had gnawed at her all day. "Sarah, I need you. Something's wrong. It's not just me losing it this time. You'll see." He'd given her directions instead of an address, as if he already knew she wouldn't find the place on a map. The turnoff appeared suddenly. A dirt road with no sign, no street light, just a break in the trees. Sarah slowed, gravel crunching under her tires as the woods closed in tighter and the car jolted over deep ruts. The GPS had long since gone blank. Up ahead, the forest broke into a clearing. Daniel's old Ford pickup sat off to one side, muddy and leaning slightly as if one tire had gone flat. Beyond it stood a house. 3 stories tall, its siding a weather-beaten gray, its roof sagging in the middle like an exhausted animal. Every window on the upper floors was dark. Only one light burned in the downstairs front room. Sarah parked next to the truck, killed the engine, and just sat for a moment. The air was so still that even the sound of the cooling engine felt too loud. She grabbed her phone, no signal as expected, and slid it into her jacket pocket before stepping out. The porch steps groaned under her weight, each one worse than the last. By the time she reached the door, the light inside seemed wrong. Too yellow, too dim, like it had seeped through dirty glass. She knocked. "Daniel?" The door opened a crack, then swung wider. Daniel stood there barefoot, hair sticking up, eyes bloodshot. He gave her a quick, strained smile. "You made it," he said, voice low. "Good. We don't have much time." Sarah stepped inside. The smell hit her first. Mildew and something metallic, like wet coins. The living room was cluttered, stacks of old newspapers against the wall, furniture pushed toward the center. "What's going on?" she asked. Daniel shut the door and locked it. "They come at night." She stared at him. "Who?" He hesitated, glancing toward the dark hallway that led deeper into the house. Not who. What? Somewhere upstairs, floorboards creaked, slow, deliberate, as if under the weight of someone taking careful steps. Daniel's face went pale. "They're early," he whispered. Sarah froze, eyes locked on the shadowed archway that led to the staircase. "You have someone else here?" she asked, trying to keep her voice level. Daniel shook his head almost imperceptibly, his gaze fixed upward. "They don't use the front stairs. Too noisy. But they're testing me, testing us." She opened her mouth to say something, but he suddenly raised a finger to his lips. His expression wasn't frantic, no, it was worse. It was the hollow-eyed look of someone who had already decided there was no escape. The sound came again. Not footsteps this time, but a slow dragging, like something heavy being pulled across the floor above them. Sarah's skin prickled. "Daniel, what exactly is up there?" He didn't answer. Instead, he crossed the room, pushing aside a battered recliner that had clearly been dragged out of position many times before. Beneath it, the floor was scarred with long, pale grooves, furniture tracks, maybe, or claw marks. Daniel pulled up a loose floorboard, revealing a dark, narrow space beneath. "If they get in before sunrise, we go here," he said. Sarah took a step closer, peering down into the cramped cavity. It was barely 3 feet deep, lined with dirt and splinters. "You've been hiding from whatever's upstairs?" His voice dropped to almost nothing. "It's not always upstairs." Before she could ask, something upstairs thumped, hard enough to make dust drift from the ceiling. Sarah flinched. Daniel's hand shot out and gripped her wrist, not in comfort, but in warning. "They don't like the light," he murmured, "but sometimes they—" A new sound cut him off. A faint voice. At first, Sarah thought it was the wind slipping through the broken siding. But no, it was too distinct, too human. A child's voice, high and thin, drifting down the staircase. "Help me!" Sarah's pulse hammered. "Daniel!" He was already shaking his head, eyes wide. "That's not a child. That's how they get you upstairs." The voice came again, this time closer, louder. "Please, I'm hurt." And then a giggle, soft, quick, and completely wrong. Sarah's throat tightened. "I'm not staying here," she said. Daniel's grip tightened on her wrist like a vice. "If you open that door, you'll never make it to the truck. They're in the trees, too." The scraping upstairs resumed, joined now by the whisper of something moving fast across the floor. And then, one of the upstairs windows slammed shut from outside. The sound was sharp enough to make Sarah flinch, but it was what followed that truly unnerved her. A faint, slow tapping against the glass. Not random, not impatient, rhythmic. 3 knocks. A pause. 3 knocks again. Daniel's face had gone deathly pale. "They're circling," he whispered. "They like to box you in." Sarah's mind raced. "Daniel, this is insane. If this is some game, you think I'd live like this for fun?" he hissed. His eyes were bloodshot, sunken, and filled with something that looked dangerously close to resignation. "I've been here for 3 nights. Every night they get bolder. They wait, they listen, and they want me outside." The tapping upstairs stopped. The silence that followed felt heavier than the noise had. Sarah swallowed hard. "I need to see for myself." Daniel stepped in front of her. "If you look out there and it looks back—" But Sarah wasn't listening. She moved past him, her boots creaking against the warped floorboards. Every sound seemed magnified, feeding into her growing awareness that she wasn't just being watched, she was being measured. The hallway stretched toward the stairs, the light from the living room fading behind her until only a weak gray glow bled from the narrow window at the top landing. Something flickered past the glass. She froze mid-step. It had been so fast that she might have doubted she saw anything at all, if not for the soft, deliberate scrape of something sliding down the outside of the window. Her breath caught. It wasn't a hand. It wasn't even shaped like one. The voice came again, right by her ear this time, though no one was there. "You came for me." Sarah spun, heart leaping into her throat. The hallway was empty. But down at the far end, Daniel was standing perfectly still, watching her with wide, unreadable eyes. "They know your name now," he said softly. Before she could demand what he meant, the house groaned, loud and long, like something massive had just settled onto the roof. Dust rained down, and a low, vibrating thump came from directly above her head. The tapping returned, but this time it wasn't on glass. It was on wood, inside the walls. The tapping was slow at first, as though whatever was inside the walls was feeling its way along, testing the boundaries. Then it quickened, skittering up toward the ceiling, then darting down the wall to her left. Sarah's breath grew shallow. The sound wasn't just near her. It was tracking her, moving in direct response to her position in the hallway. Daniel's voice came low and urgent. "Don't run. They like that." Her pulse was pounding so hard she could barely hear him. "What are they?" she whispered. His eyes flicked to the ceiling, then back to her. "They don't have names." Before she could press him, a section of wallpaper to her right bulged inward, like something was pressing from behind it. The faint outline of fingers, too long, bent at unnatural angles, slid down the wall, the plaster creaking under their weight. Sarah staggered back toward the living room. "Daniel, what the hell is happening?" He stepped toward her, keeping his voice measured. "You remember what I said? They don't like the light?" "Yes." "Then we need more of it, now." Daniel yanked open a cabinet near the front window and pulled out a bundle of candles, a storm lantern and what looked like a cracked camping lantern held together with duct tape. He shoved the candles at her. "Start lighting. Corners first." Sarah fumbled with her lighter, her hands shaking so badly it took 3 tries before the first wick caught. From somewhere above, the dragging sound resumed, but faster now, restless. Then a hollow thud on the staircase. They both looked toward the hall. A figure stood just beyond the glow of the living room. It was tall, too tall to fit comfortably under the ceiling, and it leaned forward at a sharp angle, its head cocked far to one side as though studying them. Its face was wrong. Not obscured, not hidden, but blurred, as if the features themselves couldn't stay in place. Sarah's throat went dry. "Daniel." "Keep lighting," he breathed. The thing stepped closer, its movements jerky, almost mechanical, the wood under its feet groaning in protest. Then it spoke in the same childlike voice she'd heard upstairs. "Please, help me." The lantern in Daniel's hands flickered once, then went out. The tapping was slow at first, as though whatever was inside the walls was feeling its way along, testing the boundaries. Then it quickened, skittering up toward the ceiling, then darting down the wall to her left. Sarah's breath grew shallow. The sound wasn't just near her, it was tracking her, moving in direct response to her position in the hallway. Daniel's voice came low and urgent. "Don't run. They like that." Her pulse was pounding so hard she could barely hear him. "What are they?" she whispered. His eyes flicked to the ceiling, then back to her. "They don't have names." Before she could press him, a section of wallpaper to her right bulged inward, like something was pressing from behind it. The faint outline of fingers, too long, bent at unnatural angles, slid down the wall, the plaster creaking under their weight. Sarah staggered back toward the living room. "Daniel, what the hell is happening?" He stepped toward her, keeping his voice measured. "You remember what I said? They don't like the light." "Yes." "Then we need more of it, now." Daniel yanked open a cabinet near the front window and pulled out a bundle of candles, a storm lantern and what looked like a cracked camping lantern held together with duct tape. He shoved the candles at her. "Start lighting. Corners first." Sarah fumbled with her lighter, her hands shaking so badly it took 3 tries before the first wick caught. From somewhere above, the dragging sound resumed, but faster now, restless. Then a hollow thud on the staircase. They both looked toward the hall. A figure stood just beyond the glow of the living room. It was tall, too tall to fit comfortably under the ceiling, and it leaned forward at a sharp angle, its head cocked far to one side as though studying them. Its face was wrong, not obscured, not hidden, but blurred, as if the features themselves couldn't stay in place. Sarah's throat went dry. "Daniel." "Keep lighting," he breathed. The thing stepped closer, its movements jerky, almost mechanical, the wood under its feet groaning in protest. Then it spoke in the same childlike voice she'd heard upstairs. "Please, help me." The lantern in Daniel's hands flickered once, then went out. Darkness swallowed the room so completely that Sarah's breath caught in panic. The candles she'd lit gave off only trembling, thin halos, their glow seeming to bend away from the figure in the hall rather than touch it. Daniel cursed under his breath, fumbling with the camping lantern. "Keep your eyes on it," he hissed. Sarah tried, but the thing's outline shimmered, making it hard to tell if it was moving forward or simply unfolding toward them. The air around it felt heavier, pressing down on her shoulders. "Help me," the voice said again, but now it came from multiple places, above, behind, and still from the hall. Daniel smacked the lantern hard. A weak bluish glow sputtered to life, throwing jagged shadows against the walls. The figure didn't flinch, but its head rotated slowly, impossibly far, until it was staring straight at him. Something inside the wall to Sarah's right answered with a deep thump, and then the sound of something crawling fast, up, over, behind the ceiling. "They're not supposed to come in this far," Daniel muttered, more to himself than to her. "What does that mean?" His jaw clenched. "It means the house isn't keeping them out anymore." The tall figure stepped into the edge of the candlelight. Its legs bent backward, knees jutting the wrong way, and its arms hung so low its fingertips brushed the floor. For a heartbeat, Sarah thought she saw a face she recognized flicker across its features. Her own. Then it melted away, replaced by a blank, stretched mask of flesh. Daniel grabbed her arm. "We go to the crawl space. Now." They backed toward the loose floorboard, but before they reached it, the tall thing suddenly dropped to all fours and scuttled forward with insect speed. The candles guttered violently as the air seemed to rush inward toward it. Daniel shoved Sarah toward the floorboard opening and jumped in after her, pulling the panel shut just as something slammed into it from above. In the darkness below, the smell of damp earth filled her lungs. They lay still, both gasping, listening. Above them, slow, deliberate footsteps began pacing the living room. Then, whispering. Dozens of voices, overlapping, all of them speaking her name. The voices were not in unison. Each one lingered on her name in its own strange cadence, some lilting like a lullaby, others breaking into wet, guttural clicks. They filled the space above, seeping into the wood and soil like water through a sponge. Sarah pressed her palm over her mouth to keep from making a sound. Daniel lay beside her, motionless, except for the rapid rise and fall of his chest. The footsteps stopped. Silence swelled, thick and waiting. Then, something knelt directly over their hiding spot. The boards groaned under the weight. Sarah felt it before she heard it. A slow, testing press of fingers along the seams of the panel, as though the thing were learning the shape of their refuge. Daniel's lips brushed her ear. "Don't move. Don't breathe deep." Her lungs screamed, but she obeyed. The probing fingers withdrew, replaced by a single dragging claw, or maybe a nail, scraping along the floorboard. The sound was deliberate, like the drawing of a boundary. Then a voice, low, almost conversational, spoke right above them. "You can't hide where I've already been." Sarah's stomach dropped. A sharp knock rang through the wood, and the panel jolted against Daniel's grip. Something tried to lift it. Daniel pushed back, teeth gritted, every muscle in his arms trembling. The thing chuckled, dry, breathless, and then the pressure ceased. They stayed frozen in the dark. Minutes passed, maybe hours. The voices receded until all that remained was the faint drip of water somewhere deep in the crawl space. Daniel finally whispered, "We wait for dawn." But Sarah shook her head. Her eyes had adjusted just enough to see the faint outline of the far wall, where a narrow tunnel opened into deeper blackness. And there, at the edge of that void, something pale was moving. At first, she thought it was a hand. Then she realized it was a face, small, childlike, staring right at her from the dark, and smiling. The smile was too wide, stretching far past the point where skin should have torn. In the dim crawl space light, the teeth gleamed wet, each one needle-thin. Sarah's breath caught in her throat, but the face didn't blink, didn't move, just watched. Daniel followed her gaze and stiffened. "Don't engage with it," he whispered. "If you do, it follows." But the thing's smile widened impossibly until the corners reached the hollows of its cheeks. Slowly, it tilted its head, the sound of tendons pulling taut, echoing faintly in the cramped space. Sarah couldn't look away. Her heartbeat thundered in her ears, drowning out Daniel's urgent hiss to look down, "Keep your eyes down." The face's mouth moved, but the voice didn't come from its lips. It came from right behind her, close enough that she felt the breath on her neck. "You came for me." Sarah spun around, slamming her shoulder into the low dirt ceiling. No one was there. When she turned back, the face was gone. A sound, light, rapid, and wrong, skittered along the walls of the crawl space. It circled them, darting between the wooden supports, kicking up small cascades of dry soil. Daniel grabbed her hand. "We're leaving. Now." "But dawn's hours away. We won't last." He started pulling her toward the narrow tunnel at the far side of the crawl space. It sloped upward, the packed dirt damp beneath their palms as they crawled. The air grew colder, sharper, until Sarah's teeth ached. Behind them, the skittering stopped. Then came the sound of something crawling into the tunnel after them. It didn't move like a person. It lunged forward in jerks, scraping and thumping against the walls, the pace building with every motion. Daniel shoved her forward, his voice harsh. "Faster!" Sarah scrambled up the incline, her fingers breaking through the damp earth. She saw a faint slit of moonlight ahead, an opening. Then a hand shot past her shoulder. It wasn't Daniel's. The skin was too pale, the fingers too long, the nails black and hooked. It grasped at the dirt just inches from her face, pulling itself closer. And as it did, a voice from inside the tunnel whispered, this time in her own voice, "Don't leave me here." The sound of her own voice in that cold, perfect imitation stopped her mid-crawl. For a heartbeat, her brain tried to catch up, tried to place when she'd said those words, if she'd ever said them at all. Daniel's hand slammed into her back. "Move, Sarah!" The thing's long fingers clawed forward again, digging furrows into the packed dirt. Her panic snapped back into motion, and she scrambled toward the faint moonlight ahead. Her knees scraped raw, but she didn't care. Anything to get away from the thing pulling itself toward her. The tunnel narrowed so much her shoulders brushed both sides. Behind them came a wet, rhythmic drag, like a body pulling itself forward without the use of legs. "Almost there," Daniel grunted, his voice strained. The moonlight swelled ahead, a jagged opening no bigger than a manhole. Sarah shoved herself through, the cold night air hitting her face like a slap. She tumbled out onto damp grass, gulping lungfuls of air, the smell of wet earth and pine sharp in her nose. Daniel crawled out after her, but as soon as he cleared the opening, something slammed into him from below, hard enough to drive him forward onto his stomach. His hands clawed at the ground, dragging himself free as the pale, too long arm snaked out of the hole, groping blindly. Sarah grabbed a loose rock and smashed it down on the arm. The skin split like wet paper, but no blood came, just a black, tar-thick substance that hissed when it hit the grass. The arm recoiled instantly, vanishing back into the hole. For a moment, the clearing was still. Their breath steamed in the frigid air. Daniel pushed himself up, scanning the tree line. "They'll be out here too," he said. As if on cue, a branch somewhere in the darkness snapped. Then another. The sound came from every direction. Sarah's eyes darted to the shadows between the trees, where shapes were gathering. Tall, thin silhouettes that didn't quite match the outlines of the trunks. The air grew heavier, pressing into her chest, making each breath harder than the last. "Where's the truck?" she gasped. Daniel pointed to the left, and they ran, feet pounding against wet grass, lungs burning. But the shadows in the trees began to move with them, matching their pace. Somewhere ahead, through the darkness, Sarah saw the glint of the truck's chrome grille. Relief flooded her chest until she realized the driver's side door was already open. Daniel grabbed her arm, dragging her to a halt so abruptly she nearly fell. "Wait," he hissed. "If the door's open." He didn't need to finish. Something shifted in the driver's seat. At first, it looked like a man, broad-shouldered, sitting perfectly still, hands resting on the wheel. But as her eyes adjusted, Sarah saw its head was tilted at the exact same unnatural angle as the thing in the hallway, chin almost brushing its collarbone. The skin along its neck was stretched too thin, pale as wax in the moonlight. The thing turned its head toward them, not in a human, fluid motion, but in one fast snap. And Sarah saw its eyes were perfectly black, reflecting nothing. Daniel backed them into the shadow of a tree. "We'll go around," he whispered. They moved in a wide arc through the grass, but the figure in the truck didn't move. It just sat there, head cocked, watching. Then, slowly, it lifted one hand and waved. Sarah's blood went cold. A rustle sounded in the brush behind them. She turned and saw another figure, identical in height, tilt of the head, and black, depthless eyes, standing between two pines. This one smiled, revealing rows of teeth that didn't belong to a human mouth. Daniel's voice was barely audible. "They're hurting us." From the corner of her eye, Sarah caught more movement, dozens of them stepping silently from the trees, forming a loose ring around the clearing. The one in the truck opened the door and stepped out. Its limbs were too long, joints bending wrong. The others followed suit, all moving in that same slow, jerky way, closing the circle. Sarah's heart pounded so loud it felt like it might burst. "We can't fight this," she whispered. Daniel's gaze darted upward. "Then we don't fight." She followed his eyes and saw the power lines running above the clearing, sagging under their own weight. They disappeared into the trees, toward the main road. "If we can get under them," Daniel said, "they might not follow." "Why?" "They don't like the hum. Trust me." The figures were closing in, their silent advance broken only by the faint creak of their joints. Daniel squeezed her hand. "When I move, run." The one in the truck reached them first. It leaned forward, stretching far too close, and whispered in her own voice, "Don't run. Stay." Daniel shoved it hard and bolted toward the power lines. Sarah didn't think. She just ran. Her legs tore through the wet grass, shoes slipping in the mud, Daniel's form just ahead of her like a moving shadow. Behind them came the snap, snap, snap of joints, moving too fast, too violently to be human. The circle broke instantly. The figures lunged after them, their movements erratic but horrifyingly quick, closing the distance in seconds. "Faster," Daniel shouted over his shoulder. Sarah's lungs burned, her ribs aching with every breath. The power lines loomed above, humming faintly, their thick cables draped between leaning poles. The sound was subtle but constant, like a low, endless sigh. Daniel skidded to a stop beneath the lines and yanked Sarah toward him. The figures halted just short of the invisible boundary. They stood there, all of them, heads cocked in eerie unison. Sarah could hear them breathing, if you could call it that. It was a wet, rattling sound, in and out, like air struggling through a flooded pipe. The one from the truck stepped forward, testing the edge of the power line's shadow. The hum seemed to ripple across its skin, making its features flicker like a bad signal. It hissed, not with its mouth but from somewhere deep in its chest, and withdrew. Sarah doubled over, clutching her knees. "So, what now?" Daniel didn't answer right away. His eyes stayed fixed on the unmoving ring of watchers. "They'll wait," he said finally. "They always wait. And when the hum stops..." He gestured toward the poles. "Out here, it's not exactly reliable." The realization hit her like ice water. The hum wasn't a wall. It was a timer. As if in response, one of the poles gave a long, complaining creak. Somewhere deep in the woods, a voice, not a child's, not quite hers this time, rose above the stillness. The lights go out for everyone eventually. Sarah's skin crawled. "We can't stay here." Daniel's jaw tightened. "Then we head for the road, and whatever happens, don't listen if they sound like me." They moved quickly along the tree line, staying under the power cables, the figures pacing them from just beyond the hum. Every so often, one would dart forward and recoil, as if testing for weak spots. The road came into sight at last, a pale ribbon under the moonlight. Relief surged. Then the hum stuttered, just once, barely a second. Every figure froze and smiled. The smiles were identical, stretched too wide, teeth glinting faintly in the moonlight. They didn't move, didn't lunge. They just stood there, heads tilted, as if savoring the moment before a meal. Daniel's grip on Sarah's arm tightened. "Keep moving," he whispered, voice sharp with urgency. They picked up their pace, boots thudding against the uneven ground. The power lines sagged lower here, swaying slightly in the cold breeze. The hum returned to its steady pitch, but Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that it was weaker. One of the poles ahead leaned at a precarious angle, its base rotted and dark. Daniel noticed it too. If that one goes, she didn't need him to finish. The hum would break, and so would their only barrier. The road was just beyond the leaning pole. Freedom, if that was even the right word, was 100 feet away. They passed under the sagging line, and the figures stopped pacing them. They stood perfectly still, their bodies blending into the dark like shadows waiting for the right cue. Then, from somewhere far behind, came a long, splintering crack, the sound of wood giving way. The hum faltered, once, twice, then cut out entirely. The silence was deafening. Sarah's body moved before her mind caught up. She bolted for the road, Daniel right behind her. Branches whipped against her arms and face as they tore through the last strip of trees. The figures moved now, fast, impossibly fast, closing the gap in seconds. Their limbs bent at wrong angles to cover the distance, their feet barely touching the ground. Sarah hit the asphalt, her shoes slipping on the wet surface. Daniel was beside her, shouting something she couldn't make out over the pounding of her blood in her ears. Headlights appeared in the distance, a car coming toward them. Hope flared, sharp and desperate. She waved her arms, screaming for help. The car slowed, its beams washed over them, blinding for a moment. And when her vision cleared, the driver was leaning forward, head tilted at that same awful angle, smiling. The car rolled to a slow, deliberate stop just a few feet from where Sarah stood, frozen in the middle of the road. The driver's smile never wavered, and in the stark glare of the headlights, she saw its skin ripple, like something was shifting underneath, pressing to get out. Daniel yanked her back toward the shoulder. "Off the road," he barked, but the sound of rushing footsteps from the tree line made her spin. The others were spilling onto the asphalt now, dozens of them, their jerky movements silhouetted against the moonlight. They didn't sprint. They glided, closing in with unnatural ease, forming a crescent that pushed Sarah and Daniel toward the waiting car. The driver's door swung open on its own. Inside, the dome light flickered, casting brief, sickly yellow flashes across the interior. It was empty, or at least it looked empty. Sarah's instincts screamed to run, but the space behind them was already closing. She could hear the soft hiss of the figures breathing, a sound that somehow crawled inside her ears and stayed there. Daniel's eyes locked on the opposite tree line. We cut across, now. They darted toward it, their shoes slapping against the wet asphalt. Sarah's shoulder clipped the side mirror of the idling car, and the glass bent just enough for her to see her own reflection. Only it wasn't her face staring back. It was pale, grinning, eyes black as coal. She stumbled, nearly falling, but Daniel caught her arm, dragging her into the trees. Branches snapped underfoot, the ground soft and uneven. Behind them came the sound of the crowd giving chase, not all at once, but in scattered bursts, like a predator pack taking turns. Somewhere ahead, the darkness broke into a faint glow. Not daylight, but something warmer than moonlight. A house, Daniel panted. It's gotta be. They burst into a small clearing, and there it was, a squat, weathered cabin, light spilling from its single window. Smoke curled lazily from the chimney, the scent of burning cedar riding the air. For one surreal moment, Sarah thought they were safe. Then she saw the figure in the window. It was waving, and it was her. Sarah froze mid-stride. The version of herself in the cabin's window stood perfectly still except for that slow, deliberate wave. The gesture wasn't a greeting. It was a lure. Daniel didn't slow. He grabbed her wrist and yanked her toward the door. "Don't look at it," he said through clenched teeth. Her double's hand lowered, and the smile that replaced it was too precise. Her exact lips, her exact teeth, but stretched in a way Sarah knew she had never smiled in her life. The figures from the road were spilling into the clearing now, their black eyes fixed on the cabin. None of them crossed into the glow spilling from its windows, instead pacing just outside the reach of the light. Daniel banged on the door. "Open up!" A lock rattled. The door swung inward just enough for them to slip through before it slammed shut again. The interior was small, almost bare. A wood stove in the corner hissed and popped with heat. The light came from a single oil lamp on a table in the center of the room. And sitting at that table was a man. His face was lean, weathered, eyes the color of storm clouds. He didn't look up from the object in his hands, a length of copper wire he was twisting slowly between his fingers. "You brought them here," he said, his voice flat. Daniel bristled. They weren't at my door until you were." Sarah stepped forward. "Look, whatever they are, they're not—" The man's eyes finally met hers. "They're listening right now." She glanced toward the curtained window. Through a small gap in the fabric, she saw the clearing outside. Empty. Her stomach dropped. "They're not gone," the man said, following her gaze. "They're just choosing where to be." Daniel frowned. "Who are you?" The man's hands kept twisting the wire. "Doesn't matter. What matters is you're not walking out there until dawn." Sarah's pulse quickened. "Then we stay here." The man set the wire down. "You can, but she," he pointed at Sarah, his expression unreadable, "isn't welcome." The oil lamp's flame shivered, and somewhere inside the cabin, another Sarah laughed. The sound of her own laughter, low, deliberate, almost mocking, slid through the cabin's air like smoke. It came from behind her, where there was nothing but a short hallway leading to a closed door. Sarah's skin prickled. "That's not me," she said, but her voice trembled enough to make the denial sound weak. The man at the table didn't flinch. "It's been wearing your face since you set foot in the hollow." Daniel stepped between Sarah and the hallway. "If there's something back there—" "Don't open that door," the man interrupted sharply. "It doesn't need your permission if you do." The laugh came again, softer this time, as if the thing behind the door was leaning close to it, listening. The sound carried her exact pitch, her cadence, even the faint hitch in breath she made when trying not to laugh at something serious. Daniel looked to the man. "Then what do we do?" The man's eyes dropped to the copper wire again. "We wait. You keep the light steady. You don't answer when it talks, and you never let it be the one to break the silence." Sarah swallowed hard. "What happens if—" The oil lamp flickered violently, the flame bending toward the hallway. The voice behind the door called out, exactly like hers. "Daniel." Daniel's jaw tightened. "Don't answer," he murmured to himself. "Daniel, she's not me." Sarah felt the room tilt, her hands curled into fists at her sides. "It's lying." The man's voice was low, urgent. "That's what it does. It'll split you until you don't know which one's real." Then, from outside the cabin, her own voice answered the one inside. "I'm here." The man shot to his feet, overturning the chair. "They've doubled you," he said. "It's about to get loud." Even as he spoke, the figures began to gather outside again. Their shadows passed across the curtains, dozens of them, moving in slow, synchronized arcs around the cabin. The door at the end of the hallway rattled once, then it started to open. The man slammed his palm down on the table, sending the oil lamp skidding toward the edge. "Hold the light!" he barked. Daniel caught it just before it toppled, his knuckles white around the base. The flame wavered but didn't go out. The hallway door eased open, inch by inch, revealing nothing but blackness beyond. The darkness wasn't just absence of light. It looked thicker, as if it had weight bulging against the frame. Then she stepped out. It was Sarah in every detail. Same jacket, same mud-smeared jeans, same cut above her eyebrow from when she'd fallen earlier. But her smile was wrong, too wide, and she didn't blink. Her double's voice was soft, almost kind. "You don't have to run anymore. I can take it from here." Sarah took an involuntary step back. "You're not me." The double's head tilted. "Aren't I? Look at him." She gestured toward Daniel without turning. "He can't tell the difference." "Not really." Daniel's gaze flicked between them, his grip on the lamp tightening. His mouth opened as if to speak, but the man at the table cut him off. "Don't engage it," he growled. "The more you talk, the more it anchors." Her double ignored him, taking a step closer. "I know what you're afraid of, Sarah. I know about the nights you can't sleep, about the things you almost told him but didn't." Her smile sharpened. "I am you, just without the fear." The cabin's walls groaned, as though something heavy was pressing against them from the outside. The shadows in the curtains shifted, bunching together near the front door. The man snatched up the copper wire and moved toward the hallway, muttering something under his breath that sounded older than language. The double's smile faltered for the first time, her eyes darting toward him. The flame in the lamp guttered low. From outside, a dozen voices, her voice, spoke in perfect unison. "Let her in." The man lunged forward, looping the copper wire over the double's head. She shrieked, not in pain, but in a sound like tearing metal, and the blackness behind her surged forward, spilling into the hallway like liquid shadow. The oil lamp went out. Darkness swallowed the cabin whole. Sarah's ears filled with the sound of movement, too much movement for the small space, scrapes, thumps, and the sickening crack of joints bending where they shouldn't. She staggered back, her hands grasping blindly for anything solid. "Light!" Daniel's voice cut through the chaos, panicked but near. "I can't see," she started, but something brushed past her arm, cold, slick, and wrong. The man's voice came from the black. "Keep still." But the double's voice rose over his, louder now, echoing from every wall. "I can see just fine." Something slammed into the table, sending the oil lamp clattering across the floor. Sarah dropped to her knees, groping through the dark until her fingers hit cool glass. She found the lamp's base, shaking it hard, but the wick was soaked with something thick and cold, not oil. From the hallway came the sharp twang of the copper wire tightening, followed by a high, piercing wail that seemed to vibrate in her teeth. Daniel's hand gripped her shoulder in the dark. "It's not over. Move!" They stumbled toward the door, but as Sarah reached for the latch, a new weight pressed against it from the outside. Through the wood, she heard the muffled sound of breathing, wet and heavy, and then her own voice whispered right into the crack. "If you open this, you'll be safe." Daniel pulled her back just as the doorframe shuddered under a heavy blow. The wood splintered but didn't give. From somewhere above, the roof groaned, dust drifting down onto their hair and shoulders. Something was climbing over the cabin, slow and deliberate, its nails clicking against the shingles. The man's voice barked from the hallway, strained with effort. Back corner, by the stove. Now! They groped their way toward the corner, the warmth of the stove a sudden jarring contrast to the cold that filled the rest of the room. The man stumbled in after them, one arm bleeding, the copper wire dangling loose in his hand. "She's not gone," he panted, "and when the walls break, they all come in." Outside, the ring of voices began again. Dozens of Sarahs, speaking in perfect sync, almost mourning. But in the dark, the man's grim tone made her stomach knot. "No," he said, "that's the lie they tell right before they take you." The words seemed to drain what little warmth the stove gave off. Sarah felt the heat at her back, but it no longer seemed to sink into her skin. The cabin felt smaller, the air thicker, like the world beyond the walls was pressing inward. Daniel kept glancing toward the windows, his jaw tight. "Then what's the truth?" The man didn't answer immediately. He was watching the ceiling as though listening to something only he could hear. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, resigned. "They don't wait for dawn. They wait for you to hope it's coming." A sharp crack rang out from above, wood splintering under weight. The thing on the roof was heavier now, its movements slower, deliberate. Sarah's pulse hammered. "We can't just sit here. There's got to be a way out." The man's eyes flicked to her. "There's one, but you won't like it." Before she could ask, a shadow swept across the nearest window. It was brief but massive, like a tall figure sliding past, blocking out the faint moonlight. Then came the sound of nails, long, hooked, scratching down the glass in slow, deliberate arcs. The man moved to the far wall, pulling aside a section of rough boards to reveal a narrow dirt tunnel. It leads out into the hollow, past the tree line. If you're quick, they can't close the circle in time. Daniel stepped closer, suspicious. "And what's the catch?" The man's expression didn't change. "It only works for one." The scratching at the glass stopped. Silence swelled between the three of them, thick enough to choke on. Sarah's throat tightened. "So you're telling us one of us runs, and the other distracts them," the man finished. From the hallway came the soft sound of footsteps, bare feet on old wood. They were slow, deliberate, and getting closer. Her own voice drifted into the room from the dark. "I'll go. You stay." Daniel's hand found hers in the dark, gripping tight. "Don't listen." But the double stepped into the faint glow from the stove, wearing her face like a perfect mask, and smiling. And in her other hand, she held Daniel's arm. Sarah's stomach lurched. For a split second, she thought it was a trick of the light, some awful illusion meant to rattle her. But then she saw the blood dripping from the hand clutching Daniel's severed arm. The skin was pale and goose-fleshed, the fingertips curled slightly as though still trying to grasp. Daniel's grip on her tightened. She looked at him, whole, standing beside her, only to realize his hand was ice cold, too cold. Her breath caught. "Daniel," the double's smile widened. "I told you, you can't tell which one's real." The man stepped forward, the copper wire dangling from his fist. "Don't let her talk to you," he snapped, but his voice shook now, and his eyes never left Daniel. Sarah's mind spun, memories of the run through the woods, the hum of the power lines, the chase through the clearing. The Daniel beside her had been silent most of the way. Too silent. The one holding the severed arm tilted her head and let it fall with a wet thump to the floor. "They can both go, you know. All I need is for you to choose." The figures outside began to press against the cabin, the wood creaking and bowing under their weight. A crack split one of the boards near the window, letting in a sliver of cold night air. and with it, dozens of eyes peering through. Daniel, her Daniel, stepped between her and the double. "Sarah, listen to me. You know it's me. You feel it." The man with the copper wire swore under his breath. "This is how they win. You pick, you bind yourself to the wrong one, and they drag you under before you realize you've gone." The double moved closer, the heat of the stove making her skin shimmer unnaturally. She extended her hand, palm up. "Come on, Sarah. Leave this place. Leave him. I'll take you somewhere they can't follow." The real, or maybe not real, Daniel turned to her, desperation plain in his face. "Sarah, don't you dare." The boards along the roofline splintered, and long, black-fingered hands began to reach in from above. One landed on the double's shoulder, curling possessively. Another groped for Daniel. The man raised the copper wire, voice rising into that strange ancient mutter again. "You have to move now, or you're both theirs." Sarah's heart pounded so hard it drowned out the voices, the creaking wood, even her own thoughts. And then both Daniels spoke at once. "Run with me." The words collided in the air, identical in tone, cadence, and urgency. For a moment, Sarah's mind fractured, each voice tugging at something deep inside her, each pulling her in a different direction. The copper wire in the man's hands hissed faintly, as though reacting to the choice forming in her head. "Don't answer them," he barked. "The moment you do, you're caught." The roof groaned again, another board snapping clean through. The black hands multiplied, clawing through gaps in the ceiling and walls, fingertips brushing her hair, her jacket. The air was growing colder by the second, each breath a cloud that hung too long before dissipating. Her eyes darted between the two Daniels. The one on her left, closer to the stove, had the wide, unblinking eyes of prey that already knew it was cornered. His chest rose and fell too quickly. A thin bead of sweat slid down his temple. The one near the hallway stood straighter, his breathing steady. Calm, almost too calm. "Pick," they both seemed to say without speaking. The man's muttering grew faster, the copper wire now glowing faintly in the dim light. "One's the Hollow's shadow," he growled, "and one's yours. Shadows can wear you better than you can wear yourself. That's why you don't trust your eyes." The Daniel near the stove stepped closer, voice trembling. "Sarah, you remember Austin, the storm. You thought the wind sounded like someone knocking." Her breath hitched. That was real. A night years ago, her and Daniel trapped in a power outage, laughing nervously over flashlights and melting ice cream. The other Daniel, hallway Daniel, spoke without missing a beat. "That's not how it happened. The knocking was real. I went outside to check, remember? And you begged me not to." Sarah's skin crawled. That was true, too. The man at the table slammed the copper wire against the wall, the sharp metallic clang ringing out like a bell. The shadow hands recoiled, but only for a second. "You've got heartbeats to decide," he warned. "And if you pick wrong..." The wall to her right caved inward, showering the floor with splinters. Figures began pouring in, tall, bent things with blank faces that rippled like disturbed water. Both Daniels lunged for her at once, and in their perfectly overlapping voices they whispered, "Don't let go." Their hands closed around her arms at the same time, two identical grips, warm, desperate, real, too real. Sarah's mind screamed to pull away from both, but the moment stretched, the cabin dissolving into chaos around her, splintering wood, cold air rushing in, shadow-thin limbs clawing for her from every direction. The man's voice cut through it, sharp and furious. "You're letting them split you. Choose nothing, or you're gone." Her pulse roared in her ears. She wrenched free from both grips, stumbling back into the corner by the stove. The warmth there seemed to ripple like a living thing, pushing faintly against the cold, pressing in from the rest of the cabin. The double, if it was the double, laughed. the sound bending into something metallic and hollow. The other Daniel snarled in frustration, and for the first time his teeth looked just slightly too sharp. The man lunged forward, copper wire in one hand, grabbing Sarah's wrist with the other. "The tunnel's your only chance. Don't look at them. Don't listen, just run." The hands from the ceiling reached lower now, their nails scraping grooves into the floorboards. The tall, blank-faced figures were halfway inside, their heads bending at inhuman angles to fit through the broken walls. The man shoved Sarah toward the hidden tunnel. "Go!" She dropped to her knees, crawling into the narrow dirt passage. The air inside was damp and cold, smelling of earth and something older. Something that had been waiting here a very long time. Behind her, the cabin erupted into violence, wood snapping, furniture shattering, Daniel shouting her name over the deep, unearthly screeches of the hollow things. She didn't look back. Couldn't. The tunnel sloped downward, each foot of distance dimming the noise behind her, until all she could hear was her own breathing, fast, ragged, and echoing off the packed walls. Then, ahead in the dark, a shape appeared. It was crouched, waiting for her. And as she drew closer, its head lifted, revealing her own face. Mud-smeared, terrified, and whispering urgently, "You picked wrong. You picked wrong." The whisper slid into her like a blade, cold and sure. The thing's lips didn't move after it spoke, yet she could still hear the words echoing in her head, overlapping with her own thoughts, until she wasn't entirely sure which were hers. Sarah froze in the narrow tunnel, her knees sinking into damp earth. The figure blocking her way tilted its head in a perfect imitation of her, eyes wide, pupils swallowed in black. Behind her, faint but growing louder, came the sound of something crawling through the dirt after her, elbows or knees hitting the ground in a steady, predatory rhythm. Her double smiled. "You don't have to run anymore," it whispered in her voice. "You made the choice, even if you think you didn't. I'm here to take the rest." Sarah's throat was dry, her palms slick with cold sweat. "You're not me," she rasped, but the words felt weak, unconvincing. The thing's smile widened, revealing teeth that were almost hers, but just slightly too long, too sharp. "You don't get to decide that anymore." The crawling behind her sped up, the sound swelling in the close, airless dark. The double leaned closer, its movements too fluid for the tight confines of the tunnel. "If you keep going," it said, "you'll never know if the one behind you is the real Daniel. You'll just leave him to us." Sarah's chest constricted. The voice behind her, faint but familiar, called her name now. "Sarah, wait." It was Daniel's voice, shaky, human. Her double's black eyes glistened. "Or maybe it's me. Maybe I'm in both places. That's the trick. You'll run right into my arms one way or another." The crawling sound behind her stopped. Silence pressed in like a weight. Then Daniel's voice came again, closer this time, breathless. "Sarah, please, don't leave me." Her double didn't move, didn't blink. It just kept smiling, letting the air between them thicken until she swore she could feel its breath mingling with hers. Somewhere deep in the hollow, far away but rising, came the sound of the others, their voices layering together until they were indistinguishable from her own, almost there. And for the first time she realized they weren't talking to her. The realization sent a cold ripple through her chest. Whoever, or whatever, they were speaking to, it was already here in the tunnel with her. Sarah's eyes darted between the double in front of her and the darkness behind. The silence from the rear was worse than the crawling. It meant whatever was back there didn't need to rush. The double leaned forward until its face nearly touched hers. "You've always been slower than you think," it whispered, her own voice curling into mockery. From the darkness behind her, Daniel's voice broke through again, sharper now, urgent. "Sarah, that's not me in front of you. Move. Push past it." Her heart clenched. It sounded like him. It felt like him. The double's head tilted sharply to one side, its eyes narrowing in a mimicry of suspicion. "Of course he'd say that," it murmured. "He wants you to think I'm the shadow. But we both know shadows don't warn you." Sarah's knees trembled, the packed dirt beneath them shifting slightly, almost as if the hollow itself was breathing around her. Behind her, the sound of movement resumed, only now it wasn't crawling. It was standing, rising in the narrow tunnel in a way that made no sense. She could feel the cold radiating off it, brushing her back. The double's hand shot out, gripping her wrist with inhuman strength. Its skin was cold, but not corpse cold, more like stone left in shade, unyielding and heavy. From behind, Daniel's voice turned desperate. "Sarah, listen to me. If you let it hold you, it can take your place. You'll wake up in its skin." The double's smile thinned into something almost pitying. "He's lying. You already did." The tunnel seemed to constrict around her, the ceiling pressing lower, the air growing stale and sour. Her pulse thundered in her ears, every instinct screaming to move, but which way? Forward into her own face, or back into the thing wearing Daniel's voice? From both ahead and behind, perfectly in sync, the voices spoke her name. And then, with identical urgency, they said, "Choose." The word ricocheted through the narrow tunnel, vibrating in her chest like a second heartbeat. Choose. The double in front of her tightened its grip on her wrist, nails pricking her skin. The voice behind her, Daniel's voice, was closer now, too close, each syllable brushing the back of her neck with a faint warmth that made her flinch. "I'm real," the one in front said, black eyes steady, unblinking. "I'm real," the one behind echoed, the timbre of the voice so perfect it hurt. Sarah's breath came in shallow bursts. She tried to remember, every moment since she'd arrived at the hollow, every word Daniel had spoken, every time her double had appeared. But they bled together, seamless, impossible to separate. Her fingers twitched in the double's grasp, and it squeezed harder, grounding her in its touch. "Feel this," it murmured. "Shadows can't hold you. They pass right through." "Wrong," the voice behind her snapped, sharper than before. "That's exactly what they want you to believe. If you go with it, you won't even know you're gone." The packed dirt walls seemed to press in closer, the stale air filling with an almost metallic tang, like blood and wet stone. Somewhere deeper in the hollow, a low hum began to rise, vibrating through her bones. It wasn't the hum of power lines, it was organic, alive. The sound made the double flinch, barely but enough. Sarah's mind seized on that flicker. "What's wrong?" she asked, voice trembling. The double's smile returned quickly, but its grip loosened just a hair. "Nothing. Keep your eyes on me. We'll leave together." Behind her, the voice, Daniel, or the thing pretending, spoke in a rush. "It can't go where that sound's coming from. That's why it wants you to stay here." The hum swelled, the tunnel floor trembling under her knees. The double's nails dug in. "Sarah, don't listen." For the first time, she saw something in its face, a crack, subtle but real. Not fear exactly, but strain. And then the voice behind her, softer now, almost breaking. "If you choose wrong, I won't get another chance." The hum became a deep, resonant thrum that seemed to pulse in time with her heartbeat. The hollow was forcing her hand. Her mouth opened. The choice was coming. And from somewhere far away, but unmistakably her own, another voice whispered, "Don't pick either." The words were like a blade sliding between the other's voices, sharp, certain, and carrying a weight the others didn't. "Don't pick either." The double in front of her stiffened, its grip tightening again, nails biting deeper into her skin. Behind her, Daniel's voice went silent for the first time since it had appeared in the tunnel. The hum swelled until it was inside her bones, rattling her teeth, making her vision pulse. She could taste it, like copper and ozone on her tongue. "What happens if I don't?" she asked, her voice shaking but louder now. The double's smile was gone. In its place was something colder, flat. "Then you stay, here, with us, forever." "Us?" Sarah asked. Behind her, the voice returned, softer, almost coaxing. "It's not about us. It's about you. You don't have to fight. Just let it happen. Let either happen." The hum was so strong now that the dirt walls around her seemed to pulse and shift, squeezing in and relaxing with each beat. The tunnel no longer felt like earth. It felt like something's throat. Her own voice, the one that had said, "Don't pick either," came again, clearer this time, as if she were speaking from somewhere ahead in the darkness. "They can only bind you if you choose. If you walk past both, they can't hold you." The double's hand shot to her other wrist, trying to anchor her. Its skin was colder now, its eyes starting to shimmer and lose their shape, like oil on water. "You'll never make it past. We'll tear you in two before you take 3 steps." Behind her, Daniel's voice changed, not in tone, but in texture. It became layered, as though 100 mouths were speaking it at once. "You've already chosen, Sarah. You just don't know it yet." The hum pitched higher. The tunnel shook hard enough to knock clumps of dirt onto her shoulders. Somewhere ahead, past the double, the dark was breaking. Not into light exactly, but into a strange pale glow, like fog lit from within. Her pulse thundered. She thought of the cabin, of Daniel's face, both of them, of the thing upstairs in the hollow house, the tapping in the walls, the child's voice that had never been a child. The double's grip faltered for a fraction of a second. The voice behind her moved closer, almost touching her back. Sarah took a breath, braced her hands against the dirt, and hurled herself forward, straight through her own face. The double's body felt wrong as she passed through it, cold and heavy, but with a strange give, like pushing through soaked cloth. It didn't fall or recoil. It clung. Fingers like iron hooks scraped down her arms, tearing skin, but she shoved harder, her knees digging into the damp earth until she broke free. The hum was deafening now, filling the tunnel like a living thing. The pale glow ahead pulsed in time with it, spilling faint light over the walls. Behind her, the double screamed, not in her voice this time, but in a shrill metallic wail that bent the air around it. "Sarah!" The layered voice of the thing behind her surged forward, closing the distance fast. She could hear its limbs hitting the dirt, too many limbs all moving at once. She crawled faster, the tunnel narrowing until it scraped her shoulders. Clumps of earth fell into her hair, into her eyes. The glow was brighter now, resolving into an open space just ahead, an exit. Something cold closed around her ankle. She kicked hard, dirt spraying into the air, but the grip tightened, claws digging in deep enough to draw blood. The hum faltered for a fraction of a second, and in that pause she heard the thing's voice, low and intimate, right against her skin. "You can't leave. You're mine now." Her hands found a jut of root in the wall. She gripped it with both hands and pulled forward with everything she had. The root snapped and she surged ahead, the claws scraping a last shallow line down her calf before letting go. The tunnel burst open into a small circular chamber, lit entirely by the strange glow. The walls weren't dirt anymore. They were smooth stone, carved with symbols she couldn't understand. The hum was coming from here, resonating through the floor. In the center of the chamber stood a figure. It was her again, but not the grinning double. This version was still, expressionless, her eyes reflecting the pale light. "Step in," it said softly, "and you'll be free." Behind her, the sound of crawling began again. Faster. Sarah's chest heaved, the stale, cold air of the chamber catching in her throat. The figure in the center didn't move, didn't breathe, just stood there in the pale light, waiting. Her voice, calm, even, nothing like the others, filled the room without echo. They can't touch you in here, but you can't stay long. Behind her, the sound of the crawling was joined by something worse, a wet, dragging noise, like a body pulling itself through mud. It was close, too close. Sarah stepped toward the figure. The stone floor thrummed under her feet, matching the pulse in her skull. "If I step in, what happens?" "You'll remember," the figure said simply. Sarah's brow furrowed. "Remember what?" The crawling grew louder, faster, and she could feel the rush of cold air spilling into the chamber from the tunnel. "That you've been here before." The words hit her like a sudden drop in temperature. Her mind tried to recoil, but something deep inside stirred, an ache just behind her eyes, a flicker of memory she couldn't quite reach. "You don't have time to doubt," the figure continued. "Step into the circle. If you hesitate, they'll pull you back." The glow revealed a thin ring carved into the stone around the figure's feet. Inside the ring, the light was warm, almost golden. Outside it, the pale glow felt like frost on her skin. The dragging sound was at the chamber's mouth now. She didn't dare look back. Her hands trembled. "And if I step in and you're lying?" The figure tilted its head, not mockingly, not with malice, but with a strange patience. "Then you'll never know, because you won't leave." Something moved at the edge of the light. Long fingers curled into the stone, followed by a blank, faceless head bending impossibly low to fit inside. The hum wavered, as if the hollow itself were straining to push it back. The faceless thing whispered, not in her voice this time, but in Daniel's, cracked and shaking. "Don't." The figure in the circle extended its hand to her. The faceless thing reached for her ankle. Sarah stepped forward. The moment her foot crossed the carved ring, the hum shifted, deepened, until it was inside her chest, vibrating through her ribs. The faceless thing's hand stopped inches from her ankle, its fingers trembling as if meeting an unseen barrier. It leaned closer, its featureless head tilting with slow, jerking motions, but it couldn't breach the circle. The warmth inside the ring spread up Sarah's leg, her shoulders loosening for the first time since the hollow swallowed her. The figure, her other self, spoke in that same calm voice. "You're safe, but not free. Not yet." Sarah's eyes darted between the faceless thing and the tunnel behind it, where shadows writhed and twisted as if more were waiting just beyond sight. "Then what is this? What am I supposed to do here?" "You let go," the figure said, "of the ones they've taken, of the ones they've worn." Her chest tightened. "Daniel?" The figure nodded once. "If he's still him, you'll feel the thread between you. If he's not, the hollow already has him." The faceless thing pressed harder against the invisible barrier, its long fingers splayed wide. From behind its blank surface came Daniel's voice, breaking on her name. "Sarah, it's me. Please, don't listen to it." Her nails dug into her palms. "How do I know?" The figure's eyes softened in a way hers never had. "You don't. That's why it works." The hum swelled again, and the stone walls around the chamber shivered, fine cracks spider-webbing out from the circle. The hollow was pushing back, and it was getting closer to breaking through. The thing wearing Daniel's voice leaned so close its head pressed against the barrier, the skin there dimpling like stretched fabric. "Sarah," it said, quiet now, pleading, "if you leave me here, I'm gone." The figure beside her stepped closer, her voice low, urgent. "One thread will keep you tied here forever. Cut it, and you walk out." The cracks in the walls deepened. Pieces of stone fell to the floor, each impact sharp in the charged air. Sarah's heart thudded against her ribs, the hum shaking through her bones. "Choose," the figure said. "Let him go, or stay with him." The faceless thing's fingers twitched against the barrier, and its voice, Daniel's voice broke into a sob. "Please." The plea cracked through her like ice breaking underfoot. It was Daniel's voice, so raw, so full of the familiar tremor she'd heard in moments he didn't want her to see, that for a heartbeat she almost forgot where she was, almost forgot what wore that voice. The glow within the circle flared faintly, as if urging her to decide before the walls themselves collapsed. Sarah's throat tightened. "If I let go, what happens to him?" she asked, but the question was barely more than a whisper. The other Sarah didn't flinch. "If it's him, the hollow takes what it wants. If it's not, then what you're looking at is already gone." The cracks in the walls lengthened, dust trickling down like sand in an hourglass. The hum wavered again, no longer a steady thrum, but strained, as though whatever kept the hollow at bay was tiring. The faceless thing pressed both hands against the barrier now. The skin shifted, rippling into something almost human, a mouth forming just enough to twist into Daniel's pleading expression. "Sarah, we ran through the storm together," it said. "You remember? You laughed when the flashlight died. I held your hand." Her heart clenched. That was hers. That was theirs. The other Sarah's voice cut through the moment, sharper now. "Memories aren't proof. They take them from you while you sleep and wear them until you believe they're theirs." The mouth on the thing's shifting face trembled. "You don't have to believe me. Just don't let go." The hum faltered again, and a deep, resonant groan rolled through the chamber. One of the cracks split open wide enough to let a rush of freezing air pour in, carrying with it the faint sound of the other's voices, her voice, layered in dozens of impossible harmonies. "She won't choose." The figure beside her fixed her with a steady gaze. "This is the only time you'll have. Once the hollow swallows the circle, you won't be able to leave without it." The faceless thing's hands spread wide, and for a brief instant, the skin at its center became Daniel's face, tear-streaked, eyes shining, lips forming the words without sound. "Don't." Sarah's hands shook as she reached toward the thread she felt in her chest, a taut, invisible line pulling her toward the thing beyond the barrier. It was warm, alive, familiar. She could cut it, she could walk out, or she could hold on. The walls cracked again. The light began to dim. She took a breath, pulled. The thread burned under her touch, not with heat, but with an ache so deep it seemed to coil through every part of her. The faceless thing flinched, the image of Daniel's face flickering, warping, and then snapping back into place with a desperate force. The other Sarah's voice was steady, almost gentle. "Cut it, and the weight leaves you. Cut it, and the hollow can't follow." The thread pulsed once, strong, steady. And in that moment she knew it was him, or it was what she had always known as him. The thought struck her like a blow. Maybe there was no difference anymore. Maybe that's what the hollow did. It blurred the line until you couldn't see it. The faceless thing leaned closer, its hands flat against the barrier. "If you let go," it said softly, "you'll never know if you killed me or saved yourself." The hum was breaking apart now, fractured into jagged bursts. The glow of the circle dimmed with each one, the protective warmth faltering. Cracks in the walls spread faster, chunks of stone falling inward. The air was so cold it burned in her lungs. Sarah's grip on the thread tightened. It felt fragile, like a spider's silk, but impossibly strong at the same time. It tugged back as if begging her not to finish what she'd started. The figure in the circle with her stepped closer, their expression unreadable. "You're not deciding if he lives," she said. "You're deciding if you stay." The weight of those words hit harder than the cold. The thread thrummed once more, alive, aware, and Sarah felt tears sting her eyes. The faceless thing's voice cracked. almost breaking. Please, if you ever cared, don't. Her other self extended an open palm toward her chest. Let go. The chamber shook violently now. The cracks had become gaping splits in the walls, and through them the darkness of the hollow spilled in, reaching with thin, grasping shapes. Sarah's breath came fast and shallow. Her fingers trembled. She closed her eyes. And she let go. The thread snapped soundlessly, and for a heartbeat there was nothing. No hum, no light, no sound. Just the crushing weight of absence, as though something had been ripped out of her chest, and the space it left behind refused to close. The faceless thing recoiled instantly. Daniel's features shattered, sliding away into the blank, slick surface beneath. It made no sound as it stumbled back from the barrier, but the darkness behind it rippled violently, as if in outrage. The warmth inside the circle flared, surging up her legs and through her spine, burning away the cold. Her knees buckled, but the figure beside her caught her arm, steadying her. "You can leave now," it said simply. Sarah's voice came out raw. "What happens to him?" The figure's eyes, her own eyes, didn't waver. If it was him, he's gone. If it wasn't, it never was. The cracks in the walls screamed wider, the sound like metal tearing, and the black tendrils of the hollow whipped inward, slamming against the invisible wall around the circle. The hum shifted, rising into a steady, piercing note that made the shapes recoil, writhing. The figure stepped back toward the center of the ring. "You have to move now." Sarah turned toward the tunnel she'd entered through, but it was gone, replaced by a narrow fissure in the wall where pale light spilled through. Without thinking, she stumbled toward it, the cold air beyond promising nothing but a way. Behind her, the figure stood calm and still, watching. Sarah hesitated. "Aren't you coming?" The figure shook its head. "I don't leave. I keep the door closed for the next one." The fissure pulsed with the pale light, beckoning her forward. The darkness screamed behind her now, the hollow surging in frustration. Sarah stepped through the gap, into blinding daylight. The sudden warmth hit her like a wave, and she fell to her knees on damp grass. The wind was gentle here, carrying the scent of pine and wet earth. She turned back. There was no fissure, no stone chamber, no hollow, just a stand of silent trees. And somewhere deep among them, faint but certain, a voice she knew whispered her name. Whispered. Sarah froze, the sound threading through the warm morning air like smoke. It wasn't loud. If anything, it was too soft, just enough to make her strain to hear, to lean toward the tree line. Her heartbeat quickened. She knew that voice, knew it in the way you knew your own handwriting, your own reflection. Daniel. It came again, a little closer this time. "Sarah, I'm here." The sunlight on her skin felt real, steady, but a thin ribbon of cold unwound in her stomach. She turned her head slowly toward the sound. The trees stood perfectly still, shadows pooling thick at their roots. "You have to keep walking," she whispered to herself, though her feet didn't move. The grass under her palms was wet from morning dew, the blades bending and clinging to her skin. "Sarah," the voice called again, quieter now, almost lost in the rustle of leaves. "It's me." Her chest ached. She'd cut the thread. That should have been the end. It was the end, wasn't it? She rose slowly to her feet, eyes locked on the dark between the pines. The memory of the hollow pressed at the edges of her mind, heavy and damp, but the light here kept it from fully taking shape. She took a step forward. A shadow shifted between two trees, tall, thin, wrong in its angles, the kind of wrong that made the air around it bend. Sarah's breath caught, and for a second she almost turned away. Almost. Then the voice came again, but not Daniel's this time. It was hers. "You didn't leave." The grass beneath her feet softened, dampness seeping through the fabric of her shoes. Another step, and it wasn't grass anymore. It was cold, packed earth. The sunlight dimmed, shadows stretching across her shoulders like reaching fingers. The voice, her voice, spoke again, steady and certain. "You never do." The weight of those words settled over Sarah like a damp shroud. The sunlight was still there, technically, but muted now, as though filtered through smoke. The tree line ahead seemed thicker, the spaces between the trunks closing in. She stopped walking. "I did leave," she said, though it sounded weak, like she was trying to convince herself more than anyone else. Her voice from the shadows laughed softly. Not mockery, but something worse. Pity. "If that's true, why are you facing me instead of the road?" Her stomach twisted. She hadn't even noticed the dirt road behind her until now, pale in the corner of her vision, stretching out toward an open sky. She could go there. She could run. She could leave. But the shadow between the pines shifted again, and she thought she saw movement. Just the faintest curve of a shoulder, the suggestion of a hand lifting, palm up, inviting. The cold damp under her feet deepened. She looked down. No grass, no earth, just dark water pooling around her shoes, creeping higher. She backed up a step. The water followed. The voice, still hers, drifted from every part of the tree line at once. They didn't have to chase you, they just had to wait. Her pulse slammed against her ribs. She turned toward the road, toward the sun, but the air ahead shimmered faintly, like heat over asphalt. The light beyond it looked off, too flat, too still. Behind her, the water lapped at her ankles now, though it made no sound. "Sarah." This time it was Daniel's voice again, but softer, coaxing. "It's all right. You can rest now." She shut her eyes, willing the road to be real, willing herself to step forward into it. But when she opened them, the road was gone. In its place stood the hollow house. Its roof sagged, its siding gray and rotting, one front window burning with that same too yellow light. And in the doorway stood her double, smiling. The smile was the same as before, too perfect in shape, too fixed, like it had been painted onto her double's face and left to dry. "Welcome back," it said, though its lips barely moved. Sarah's chest tightened. She stepped back instinctively, but her heel met only cold water. When she glanced down, the shallow pool had spread across the ground between her and the trees, black and still, swallowing the grass and dirt alike. The hollow house loomed in front of her, larger now than it had been when she first arrived, as if it had grown in her absence, stretching taller, its walls bowing inward like something breathing. "You cut the thread," her double said, voice warm but empty. "But threads aren't the only way in." Sarah's throat felt tight. "You're not real." The double tilted its head in that slow insect-like motion. "Neither are you. Not anymore." The air around the house shifted, a faint vibration running through the boards like distant thunder. In the yellow-lit window, shadows moved. Not people, not quite shapes, but impressions of forms. They didn't walk so much as unfold across the glass, pressing their faces too close to the surface, stretching it. Sarah shook her head. "No, I left. You stepped away," the double corrected. "Leaving takes more than that." From the tree line behind her, Daniel's voice echoed again. Closer now. "Sarah, come here. You don't belong in there." Her double's smile widened, revealing teeth just a shade too sharp. "And he's right. You belong here." The black water spread wider, rippling once as if something large had shifted just beneath its surface. It crept toward the front porch of the hollow house, lapping at the bottom step. "You're stalling," Sarah said, though she wasn't sure if it was to her double or herself. The double's eyes glinted, not human reflection, but something like the shimmer of oil on a puddle. "So are you." A sound rose from the house's upper floor, Slow, deliberate footsteps crossing from one end to the other. And then the dragging. That same awful scrape she'd heard her first night here. The double turned slightly, as if listening. They've been waiting to finish what they started. The footsteps stopped. From the upstairs window, something tapped. 3 times. The 3 taps were slow, deliberate, measured like a heartbeat. Then silence. Sarah's stomach twisted. The sound pulled her memory straight back to that first night. The yellow light, the smell of mildew and wet metal. Daniel's voice telling her they don't like the light. She took another step back from the porch, but the black water followed, rippling outward in a perfect circle from her feet, as if it recognized her. The upstairs tapping resumed, faster now. 3 taps, a pause. 3 taps again. Her double smile didn't falter. "You think you've been gone hours," it said. "It's been minutes." Sarah's breath caught. "No, that's not minutes," the double repeated, taking 1 step down from the porch. The wood under its weight didn't creak. The sound was swallowed before it could exist. "You stepped into the hollow, you cut a thread, and then you came right back here. You always do." The air shifted behind her. She turned just enough to see the tree line, and froze. Daniel stood at its edge now, or what wore Daniel's shape. His head tilted at that too sharp angle, the rest of him perfectly still. His mouth hung slightly open, and though she could hear his voice calling her name, the lips didn't move. The double's voice slid into her ear, though it stood yards away. "If you go to him, they take you in their skin. If you stay with me, they take you in mine. The ending doesn't change." Her heart pounded so hard it felt like the sound was outside her body, in the water itself. The yellow light in the hollow house flared briefly, as if reacting to her hesitation. From the upstairs window came the child's voice again. "Help me." Sarah's hands curled into fists. "That's not a child." The double stepped fully off the porch now, bare feet sinking into the black water without a ripple. "No," it said. "It's you." Something inside the house began descending the stairs, slow, heavy steps, like it wanted her to hear everyone. Daniel's voice from the tree line rose, almost frantic now. "Sarah, don't let it open the door." But the front door's latch was already turning. The sound of the latch turning was impossibly loud. Metal scraping metal, slow enough to make every muscle in Sarah's body tense. Her double didn't move, didn't even glance back at the door. "You'll see it, and then you'll decide," it murmured, as if this had all been rehearsed before. The front door eased open. At first, the darkness inside seemed empty, just a shadowed hallway she recognized far too well. Then something stepped forward into the yellow light. It was her, not the smiling double beside her, not the oil-slick reflection she'd faced before, but exactly her. Mud stains, torn jacket, hair plastered damp against her temple. Her own eyes blinked at her, confused, almost frightened. "Sarah?" this new one said, voice trembling. Where have you been?" The black water lapped at Sarah's calves now, though she hadn't moved closer. It was rising slowly, surrounding her like it meant to hold her in place. Daniel, if it was Daniel, stood at the tree line, motionless. His voice carried across the water. "That one's real, the one in the doorway. Go to her." The double beside her smiled wider, tilting its head. "He's right, but she's not the only one who's real." Sarah's mouth went dry. "You're trying to make me choose again." "That's the only game there is," the double said. The Sarah in the doorway stepped forward, onto the porch, her eyes darting between the double and the tree line. "You have to get out of the water," she said quickly. "It's how they—" Her voice cut off in a sharp gasp. Her gaze locked on something just over Sarah's shoulder. Sarah turned. Daniel was gone. In his place stood one of the tall, faceless figures from the hollow. its head bent too far, its fingers twitching at its sides. It was still as stone, yet somehow she felt it leaning toward her. The Sarah in the doorway began to descend the steps. The double beside her finally turned to look at her twin, its smile never fading. From upstairs, the dragging began again. And then, without warning, the figure in the tree line stepped onto the black water. It didn't sink. The faceless figure glided across the black water as if it were solid ground, its long fingers trailing just above the surface. Every step brought with it a faint distortion in the air, like heat shimmering off asphalt, but colder, sharp enough to make the hairs on Sarah's arms stand on end. The Sarah in the doorway froze halfway down the porch steps, her chest rising and falling too quickly. "It's not supposed to come this close," she whispered, almost to herself. The double beside Sarah's shoulder spoke without moving its lips. "It's not here for her." The water climbed higher, lapping at Sarah's knees now, cold enough to ache. Beneath the surface, she could feel movement, slow, circling, brushing against her skin like the nudge of something curious. The faceless figure stopped a few paces away, its head tilted in that jerky insect motion, first to one side, then the other, as if weighing her. Its fingers twitched twice, then extended toward her, palm up. Behind her, the double murmured, "If you take its hand, you'll never drown." The Sarah on the porch shook her head violently. "Don't touch it." "That's not—" She cut herself off, glancing toward the open door behind her, where the yellow light had dimmed to a sickly orange. "They're moving," she said, voice tight. From inside the house came a low, resonant knock. One, then two, then three. This time it wasn't on glass, it was on wood. Sarah's breath came in quick bursts. "If I don't take its hand, what happens?" she asked the double. The double's smile widened just slightly. "Then it'll take you anyway, but slower." The water surged higher, pulling at her legs now. Not hard, but insistently, like it was guiding her forward. Beneath the surface, something brushed against her shin with enough weight to make her stumble. The Sarah on the porch took another step toward her, the boards creaking under her weight. "You're running out of time," she said. The faceless figure leaned forward, its hand still outstretched. From behind that blank skin came Daniel's voice again, soft, pleading. "Sarah, trust me." Somewhere deep under the water, something large shifted, and the ripples it sent spread outward until the black surface touched the first porch step. The double leaned close to her ear and whispered, "It's already holding you." The words sank into her like a stone into deep water. Sarah glanced down and froze. The black water wasn't just touching her legs anymore. It was climbing them. Not splashing, not soaking, climbing. Thin, slick tendrils were curling upward around her calves, tightening with slow, deliberate pressure. She jerked her foot back, but the water moved with her, stretching like tar before snapping back into place. The faceless figure's outstretched hand remained steady, inches away now. The voice, Daniel's voice, came again, smoother, more certain this time. "If you take my hand, I can pull you out." From the porch, the other Sarah stepped fully onto the first stair, the rising water lapping at her bare feet. She didn't seem to notice. Her eyes were locked on Sarah's, wide and urgent. "It's not him. Whatever's wearing his voice is under there." The double beside Sarah laughed quietly, the sound low and warm, as though sharing a private joke. "She's right, and she's wrong. Isn't that better?" The tendrils tightened, their cold sinking past her skin into bone. She could feel a faint rhythmic pull, like a heartbeat, but not hers, dragging her toward the figure in the water. From the open door behind the porch, Sarah, movement stirred. Shadows gathered in the hallway, folding and stretching along the walls like they were peeling themselves free. The dragging sound began again, closer this time, faster. "Choose," the double said softly. I'm not choosing, Sarah snapped, but her voice shook. The faceless figure leaned forward, and the skin where its face should have been began to ripple, features pressing outward from beneath. Eyes, mouth, nose, all forming into Daniel's face. It smiled at her, small and sad. "You already did," it said in his voice. The tendrils surged higher, curling around her thighs now. Something beneath the surface brushed her hip. Too big, too deliberate. The Sarah on the porch reached toward her, palm out. "Come here, now." Behind her, the double's breath was warm at her ear. "You're not going anywhere." And then, without warning, the water yanked her down to her knees. The shock of it stole her breath. The black water closed over her thighs, icy enough to burn, the tendrils tightening like ropes. She dug her nails into the surface instinctively, but it wasn't water anymore, not really. It had the give of flesh, the grip of muscle. The faceless figure stepped closer, its hand still extended. Daniel's voice came softer now, coaxing. "Sarah, it's all right. Just take my hand and it stops." On the porch, the other Sarah's voice rose, urgent and sharp. "If you touch it, you won't stop sinking. That's how they feed." The dragging inside the house reached the doorway. From the shadowed hall emerged a tall, crooked shape that had to bow low to fit beneath the frame. Its head swiveled toward her with a slow, deliberate crack of bone. Her double's smile deepened, its eyes glinting like wet stone. "You're the only one who still thinks you're choosing." The thing in the doorway began to descend the porch steps, each one groaning under its weight. The boards beneath the porch Sarah's feet were already darkening, the water seeping upward toward her. Sarah thrashed against the tendrils, but each movement only sank her deeper, the cold seeping higher, clutching at her hips now. She could feel something vast shifting beneath her, the faint brush of it like the sweep of a whale beneath a swimmer. The faceless figure, now wearing Daniel's face perfectly, knelt on the water's surface, their eyes locked on hers. "I can pull you out," it whispered. "I can take you home." From the porch, her own face shouted, "Sarah, move!" The crooked shape reached the last step, its long fingers dangling just above the water. Behind her, the double leaned so close its cheek brushed hers. "It's almost done," it said, almost tender. Then the tendrils yanked her forward, hard enough that her hands broke the surface. The faceless figure's palm was right there, close enough to grab, and from deep below, something pulled back. The pull from below was sudden and brutal, jerking her hips and legs deeper into the black water. Her breath hitched in a sharp gasp as the cold surged higher, pressing into her ribs. Beneath the surface, something vast coiled around her legs, not tendrils now, but something with weight, something with muscle. It didn't squeeze to crush, it held, the way a predator might hold a still living thing before deciding what to do with it. The faceless figure's, Daniel's, hand hovered inches from hers, steady as stone. "Sarah," it said, quiet, coaxing, "if you don't take my hand now, you'll see what's under there." The porch Sarah was moving closer, stepping into the black water with bare feet. Her expression was tight, focused. "Don't look down," she ordered. "It's how they teach you fear." The crooked shape from the doorway was almost upon her now. Its joints popped audibly as it crouched low, reaching one impossibly long arm toward her shoulder. The double by her side didn't flinch. "One touch," it murmured, "and you'll belong to the house." The pressure from below tightened just enough to lift her slightly, enough for her to feel that whatever held her was turning her toward it. The urge to look down was overwhelming, primal, a pull just as strong as the one from the faceless figure's outstretched hand. Her pulse hammered in her ears. "What happens if I do nothing?" she managed to choke out. The double's voice was low, almost kind. "Then we all take you together." The crooked shape's fingers grazed her hair. The thing beneath gave one sharp tug, and the water surged up to her chest, freezing her breath in her throat. The faceless figure's voice, Daniel's voice, rose, urgent now. Now, Sarah. Before it decides you've waited too long. Her body was being pulled in 3 directions at once. Forward toward the false Daniel's hand, back toward the porch, Sarah's reach, and straight down into whatever waited below. The water began to boil. The boiling water roiled around her, churning in unnatural silence. No splashes, no hiss, just black, rolling waves that lapped higher and higher against her chest. The thing beneath her tightened its hold, and for the first time she felt its skin. It wasn't slick like fish or rough like stone. It was textured in shallow, repeating grooves, like the rings of a tree. Every breath she took seemed to sink her deeper into those grooves. The crooked shape's hand closed around a lock of her hair. It didn't yank, didn't strike, just held it, lifting the strands like it was studying the weight. Its head bent lower, the absence where its face should be hovering just above her ear. The porch, Sarah shouted, "Sarah, look at me! Don't look down! Don't—" She didn't finish. The water surged upward, wrapping her waist, pulling her toward the center of the pool with brutal force. The faceless figure, Daniel's perfect imitation, moved with the water, staying inches from her. His outstretched hand was closer now, the pads of his fingers almost brushing hers. "One grip," he said softly, "and you'll breathe again." Her double's breath warmed her neck. "One grip," it echoed, "and you'll never breathe without us." Beneath her feet, no, beneath her whole body, the thing shifted again, and this time she felt more than muscle. She felt a heartbeat, slow, deep, so strong it rattled through her bones and into her jaw. It pulsed once. The crooked shape's fingers tightened in her hair. It pulsed again. Daniel's hand was right there. It pulsed a 3rd time, and the water swallowed her head. The cold was a shock so total it erased every other thought. It stabbed into her ears, her eyes, even the back of her teeth. Her lungs clenched reflexively, holding on to the last shred of air as the black swallowed everything. For a moment there was no up or down, only pressure, immense and unyielding, pressing from every side, then movement. The thing that held her began to turn, dragging her in a slow spiral deeper into the dark. Its coils shifted with the same steady rhythm as that terrible heartbeat, each pulse pulling her farther away from the surface. Shapes flickered in the blackness around her, too quick to focus on. Long limbs bent wrong. Faces she almost recognized, half lit by some sickly glow that came from nowhere. A voice. Daniel's voice rose from somewhere ahead of her, muffled and warped by the water. "Sarah, here." She opened her eyes, the sting immediate, but the dark wasn't complete anymore. Far below, a faint circle of pale light shimmered, growing as they descended toward it. The coils loosened slightly, enough for her arms to move. She reached toward the glow without thinking, and a dozen other hands reached back from it. They weren't Daniel's hands. They weren't human. Long fingers, jointed too many times, curled upward like baited hooks. The pale light flickered in their wet, translucent skin, veins writhing just beneath the surface. The heartbeat quickened. From somewhere to her left, another shape swam closer, not swimming like a person, sliding through the water without effort, its face obscured until it was almost beside her. It was her. Eyes open, mouth slack, hair drifting like drowned seaweed. Her double didn't smile this time. It only raised one hand and pressed a finger to its lips. The pale circle below widened into a doorway. The doorway pulsed faintly, its edges bending like it was made of water inside water. Through it, Sarah thought she saw sky, a strange gray-green sky, shifting as though clouds were being stirred by an invisible hand. The thing holding her paused, coils tightening slightly, as if considering whether to push her through. The hands reaching from the doorway beckoned with slow, fluid motions, their too many joints bending in unnatural directions. Her drowned double drifted closer until they were face to face, their noses almost touching. Its eyes were open wider than they should have been, the irises nearly swallowed in black. "Don't go through," it mouthed. No sound, just the shape of the words. The heartbeat from the creature below surged faster, thudding in her ribs. Each pulse seemed to push her toward the doorway, a slow but undeniable current carrying her forward. Then, faint, distant, Daniel's voice, muffled but clear enough to make her chest ache. "Sarah, please, that's not the way out." Her double's eyes darted upward into the blackness above them, and Sarah followed its gaze. For a moment she thought she saw a shimmer. Not light exactly, but a pale ripple in the darkness, far overhead, like sunlight on the other side of deep water. The coils tightened again, and the doorway below began to rise toward her, faster now, the hands reaching higher, stretching their long fingers like they could hook into her ribs and pull her through. Her double grabbed her arm with surprising strength, shaking its head violently. Its nails bit into her skin, and Sarah could feel a tremor. Whether from fear or urgency, she couldn't tell. The ripple above was fading. The doorway below was almost within reach. And in her ears, Daniel's voice and her double's silent warning clashed, one telling her to swim up, the other anchoring her in place. The heartbeat pounded so hard it felt like it might stop hers entirely. The creature holding her began to choose for her. The coils shifted, loosening just enough to slide her downward toward the pale doorway. The movement was unhurried, almost gentle, like the certainty of something that knew its prey could not escape. The hands reaching from the threshold quivered with anticipation, their two long fingers twitching in sync with the creature's heartbeat. The faint light coming from beyond the doorway spilled over them, revealing their skin was not skin at all, but a translucent membrane stretched tight over something writhing inside. Her double clung to her arm harder, pulling against the slow, inevitable drag. Its face was inches from hers now, hair drifting like black smoke in the water. Its mouth moved again, but this time the words were different. Up or gone. The ripple of light above was almost invisible now, swallowed by the oppressive dark. But as Sarah stared at it, something stirred deep in her gut, a memory of air, of warmth, of the way the wind had felt against her skin before the hollow had taken her. The coils tightened once more, and the heartbeat slowed, each heavy thud pressing against her spine like a warning. The doorway was close enough now that the reaching hands brushed her ankles, cold and soft, curling just enough to hook. Daniel's voice rose from somewhere far above, clearer now, sharper. "Sarah, fight it, please." Her double shook her violently, snapping her attention away from the doorway. Its eyes bored into hers, wide and unblinking, and for the first time she saw fear there. The creature holding her shifted its weight, the slow spiral down, accelerating. The pale hands grabbed her calves and began to pull. Sarah felt herself splitting, one part of her sinking toward the pale sky below, the other straining toward the faint ripple above. The pressure in her lungs was unbearable now, her chest screaming for air. Her double released her arm suddenly, shoving her upward with a force she didn't know it had. The coils around her legs constricted violently, and the hands below clawed higher. Something was going to tear. Pain tore up Sarah's legs as the thing's coils wrenched her downward, while the pale, clawing hands tried to climb her. Her double's push had been desperate, but it hadn't broken the grip, only shifted the struggle into a violent tug-of-war. The ripple of light above wavered, faint but closer now, as though her double's shove had dragged her a few precious feet upward. The creature's heartbeat quickened, each thud slamming through her chest like a drumbeat meant to drown out thought. Below, the doorway's glow flared brighter, as if sensing it was about to lose her. The hands tightened around her calves, and she felt the strange jelly-like pressure of the writhing things inside them, pressing against her skin. Her double appeared again, now above her, reaching down with both hands. Its mouth formed one last word. Decide. Daniel's voice echoed faintly from above, weaker than before. You don't have long. Sarah's lungs burned, her body convulsing with the primal need to inhale. The edges of her vision blurred. The pressure from the coils was crushing now, making her bones creak. She clawed upward, nails digging into her double's wrists, using it as leverage. The hands below raked her, tearing fabric and skin, but she kicked hard, ripping free from their grip. The creature bellowed, a soundless, vibrating roar that rattled the water itself, and its coils released all at once. The sudden freedom spun her in the water, disorienting her, but her double's grip on her arms steadied her. It hauled her upward with frantic force, the ripple above sharpening into a clear oval of pale light. The water around her thrashed violently as the thing below surged upward after her. Her double shoved her one last time toward the surface. Sarah broke through the light, and air slammed into her lungs like fire. She coughed, choking on both breath and water, her vision a blur of blinding white. Cold wind tore across her skin, sharp and real, carrying the scent of pine and rain. She thrashed instinctively, finding herself sprawled on wet ground, her palms sinking into mud. For a few seconds, she didn't dare look back. When she did, the water was gone. No black pool, no ripples, just a shallow depression in the earth, with rainwater. It couldn't have been more than ankle deep. Her heart still hammered in her ears, the sound tangled with the phantom thud of that terrible heartbeat. Sarah staggered to her feet, her clothes dripping, her hair plastered to her face. The forest was quiet. Too quiet. No birdsong, no rustle of branches, just the faint hiss of wind threading through the trees. She turned in a slow circle. The hollow house was nowhere in sight. Neither was Daniel. The only thing ahead of her was a narrow dirt path, winding between the trees and vanishing into a pale mist. Her breath hitched. "Daniel?" she called, voice ragged. It didn't echo. From far down the path, a figure appeared, just a shadow at first, then slowly sharpening into a person walking toward her. They moved at an easy, unhurried pace, their heads slightly bowed. Sarah's stomach twisted. "Daniel?" she called again, louder this time. The figure didn't answer. They kept coming, the mist curling behind them, their shape clearer now. They were wearing her jacket, her exact jacket. The figure stopped about 20 feet away. Slowly, it lifted its head. It was her face. But the smile wasn't wide this time. It was small, knowing, almost gentle. "You made it out," it said in her voice. "Now it's my turn." Sarah's pulse roared in her ears. The double's tone wasn't mocking this time. It was calm, almost patient. "What do you mean, your turn?" she asked, her voice cracking on the last word. Her double stepped closer, boots sinking into the damp earth. "You were pulled under because something had to take your place. That's the way out works. One leaves, one stays." Sarah shook her head hard. "No, I'm not going back." The double's expression didn't change. "You think you get to decide that?" A flicker of movement caught her eye. Behind the double, the mist shifted unnaturally, as if something tall was moving just out of view. The trees bent slightly toward it, their branches curling inward like they were bowing. "You've been carrying the hollow since you first stepped inside," the double continued, stopping just a few feet away. "It isn't a place, it's a weight, and the longer you keep it, the deeper it buries itself." Sarah took a step back, her shoes squelching in the mud. "Then I'll carry it." I don't care. I'm not letting you. The double interrupted, tilting its head. You already are me. The moment you cut the thread, I started wearing pieces of you. I only need the rest. Something in the mist let out a slow, deliberate breath. The air between them felt heavy now, pressing on her chest, making it harder to draw in the cold forest air. The double extended a hand, not grabbing, not forcing, just offering. If you give it willingly, it said softly, you'll never feel the water again. Sarah's legs trembled. Her mind screamed to run, but the forest felt wrong, like the path behind her had already folded in on itself. She stared at her own face, her own steady gaze, and from somewhere deep in the mist behind it came the faint sound of dragging. The dragging sound was slow, deliberate, like wood scraping over stone, but it carried an unnatural weight, vibrating through the mud beneath her feet. Sarah's double didn't turn to look. It just kept its hand extended, palm up, as if the thing in the mist was irrelevant. You know what's coming, it said, voice low. You heard it in the house. You felt it under the water. It doesn't stop. Not for you, not for anyone. The dragging grew louder, closer. Now Sarah could hear a faint wetness to it, like something sodden being pulled along the ground. The mist behind her double began to thin, revealing the faint curve of something tall and bent, its limbs too long, its head hanging unnaturally low. Her stomach knotted. She remembered the crooked shape in the doorway, the way its fingers had dangled just above the water. The double's voice softened. You can't outrun the hollow. You can only hand it to someone else. Sarah's breath came shallow, quick. And if I don't? The double's eyes gleamed, not with malice, but with certainty. Then it takes you the way it takes everything, piece by piece, until there's nothing left to hand over. The dragging stopped. From the mist, a shape emerged fully now, towering, skeletal, its skin the same pallid gray as the house's siding, stretched thin over bones that didn't seem entirely human. It carried nothing, yet Sarah realized with a start that the dragging sound was itself, its lower half pulled behind it, boneless, trailing in the mud like a drowned thing. The double's hand was still outstretched. You have seconds, it said simply. Sarah's gaze flicked between her own face and the approaching figure. The crooked thing's head twitched. Slowly, it began to raise one impossibly long arm toward her. And in the sudden, suffocating silence, she realized she could hear a heartbeat again. The heartbeat thudded low and heavy, vibrating through her bones like it had under the water. With each pulse, the crooked thing in the mist drew closer, its long arm unfurling inch by inch. Sarah's double stepped nearer, hand still extended, but now there was urgency in its voice. If it touches you, there's no bargain left, no escape. It'll keep you moving forever, the way it moves. Her eyes darted to the thing's dragging lower half. The mud clung to it, stringy and thick, yet it didn't slow, just kept pulling itself forward with that awful, scraping persistence. Sarah took a half step back, her breath sharp in her throat. Why me? Why any of this? Her double's expression softened, but it didn't lower its hand. Because you stepped in. That's all it takes. You saw what no one should see, and the hollow saw you back. The crooked figure let out a sound, low, wet, almost like a sigh, but stretched, too long, too thin, until it became a groaning that made the trees around them tremble. Her double's voice dropped to a whisper. You have one chance. Give it to me and you walk away. Keep it and you follow that until your legs are gone. The heartbeat grew louder, faster. She could feel it pressing against her ribs now, as if it wanted to crawl inside. The crooked thing's hand was close enough that the shadow of it stretched over her shoes. Sarah's hands clenched into fists. Her double's eyes locked on hers, unblinking, waiting. and then the crooked thing's fingers brushed the sleeve of her jacket. The touch was colder than the water had been, sharp, invasive, sinking straight through fabric and flesh into bone. Her entire arm went numb in an instant, the cold spreading fast, crawling up toward her shoulder, like frost racing across glass. The heartbeat slammed in her ears now, too loud, too fast. It wasn't hers anymore. Her double's expression shifted, still calm, but now tinged with something else. Not fear, not pity, anticipation. Last chance, Sarah. The crooked thing's grip tightened just enough to keep her still. Its fingers weren't really fingers anymore. They were lengths of something more like rope or sinew, coiling loosely around her arm, their texture damp and fibrous. The cold pushed higher, flooding her chest, making each breath shorter than the last. "Give it to me," her double urged, stepping so close their reflections almost touched. "Let go," Sarah tried to yank free, but the crooked thing's grip only deepened, the sinewy lengths burrowing under her sleeve. She could feel it now, not just on her arm, but inside, winding into muscle, threading into vein. Her double's voice sharpened, almost impatient. "If it finishes, there won't be anything left to hand over." The trees around them began to bend, their trunks creaking, branches curling downward until they brushed the mud. The mist thickened, swirling with a strange rhythm, as if breathing in time with the heartbeat. The crooked thing leaned closer, its head twitching in sharp, unnatural jerks. Where its face should have been was only a shallow indentation, and in that hollow space, the skin seemed to quiver. Her double reached out, palm hovering between them. "Give it here and you'll wake up. Somewhere else. Somewhere dry." The numbness was almost at her throat now, and her vision blurred at the edges. The crooked thing's grip surged once, pulling her half a step forward. Her double's eyes narrowed. "Now, Sarah, or it's forever." The cold was in her jaw now, spreading toward her tongue, stealing the last of her breath. Her thoughts came in short, flickering bursts, faces, fragments, the sound of her own voice laughing once in a place that smelled like rain and coffee. The crooked thing's grip pulsed with the same rhythm as the heartbeat, every thud pulling something out of her. She could feel it, thin, invisible threads unwinding from the center of her chest. Her double's hand hovered inches from her own, trembling slightly now, though whether from urgency or desire, she couldn't tell. "Give it to me," it whispered, almost reverent. Sarah's knees buckled, the cold locking her muscles in place. She wasn't sure she could stand even if the crooked thing let go. The mist churned violently, closing around the three of them until the forest was gone. No trees, no path, just a dim gray swirl, pulsing faintly like the inside of a lung. Her double stepped closer still, their foreheads nearly touching. "All you have to do," it murmured, "is stop fighting." The crooked thing's sinew fingers burrowed deeper, the sensation turning from numb to something far worse, a strange, slow burn that felt like it was hollowing her out from the inside. She thought she heard Daniel's voice, faint and distant, calling her name from somewhere deep in the mist. Her double's eyes locked on hers. "Say it," it urged. "Tell me it's mine." The heartbeat thundered, her vision narrowed to a single point, and the cold touched her heart. When Sarah forced her lips to move. Her lips were stiff from the cold, each word scraping out like it was dragged over broken glass. The crooked thing's grip tightened suddenly, the sinew fingers pulling so hard her feet slid through the mud. The burning inside her chest flared bright and hot, almost enough to burn away the cold. Her double leaned closer, mouth parting, waiting to drink in the words. "Say it, Sarah. Give it to me." But the heat in her chest shifted, twisted, becoming something else entirely. Not surrender, not release. Defiance. She bared her teeth in something between a gasp and a snarl. "No!" Her double's eyes widened, genuine shock breaking through the perfect calm. The crooked thing let out a soundless roar, its grip surging in fury. The burning inside her turned to white heat, and she realized she wasn't just being hollowed out, she could pull back. Her hands shot to the wrapped arm, fingers digging in deep. She yanked hard, pulling against the unnatural threads. The heartbeat stuttered, then quickened, and the crooked thing jerked as if in pain. The mist pulsed violently, the whole space trembling like the inside of a shaken snow globe. Her double recovered quickly, stepping forward, voice sharp. "You don't know what you're doing." "Yes, I do," Sarah spat, pulling again. The threads burned her palms, but with each tug she felt herself returning, her own heartbeat breaking through the hollows. The crooked thing's body began to twist, its long frame shuddering in jerks, the sinew unraveling from her arm. Where it pulled free, the cold retreated, replaced by pins and needles pain. The mist split above them, a thin seam of pale light spilling down. Her double's face hardened. "If you leave now, it'll come again. You can't kill it." "Maybe not," Sarah said, yanking the last thread free. "But it's not taking me today." The crooked thing recoiled fully, the mist dragging it backward into the gray until it dissolved. Her double stood alone now, watching her with something unreadable in its expression. "This isn't over," it said quietly. The seam of light widened. Sarah didn't wait. She ran for it. The light split wider with every step, the mist tearing apart around her like it was being ripped from a seam. Wind surged through the gap, sharp and cold, carrying the smell of wet leaves and something faintly metallic. Blood, maybe. Her double didn't follow. It just stood there in the swirling gray, head tilted slightly, eyes locked on her as if memorizing the moment. "We'll meet again," it called, its voice almost lost in the wind. Sarah didn't answer. She threw herself into the light. It was blinding, so bright it felt like heat pressing against her skin. And then, all at once, she was falling forward onto hard ground. The sound of rain hit her ears first. Real rain, heavy, clean, drumming on leaves overhead. She gasped for air, her chest burning, the taste of mud and metal in her mouth. When her vision cleared, she was kneeling in the middle of a dirt road. The forest loomed on either side, dense and wet, but the hollow's mist was gone. The world was in color again. She looked down. Her jacket sleeve was torn, and faint red lines marked her forearm where the crooked thing's sinew had burrowed. The marks pulsed faintly, almost in time with her heartbeat. She pushed herself to her feet, scanning the road. No Daniel, no house, no sound but the rain and the wind in the trees. A mile ahead, through the blur of rain, she saw the shape of a building, wood siding, a sloped roof, a yellow light glowing faintly in the window. Her pulse quickened. She almost moved toward it. But then she heard it, from far, far back in the forest, muffled by the downpour but unmistakable, the slow, deliberate sound of dragging. Sarah froze. The dragging was faint, almost lost under the rain, but it was there, steady, patient, as if it had never stopped. She glanced back over her shoulder. The dirt road behind her curved away into the trees, vanishing into the kind of shadow that rain couldn't seem to touch. The sound came from there. Her pulse thudded harder, the faint ache in her forearm deepening. She tugged her sleeve down as if covering the marks might silence the pull she felt toward the sound. It didn't. "Not again," she muttered under her breath, forcing herself to face forward. The building ahead glowed warm through the haze, a promise of shelter, of normal. She started toward it, her boots squelching in the mud, but the dragging grew louder. It wasn't following the road. It was cutting through the trees, angling toward her, closing the distance in slow, relentless strides. Her pace quickened. The yellow glow sharpened into a doorway, open just enough for light to spill onto the wet ground. She could make out shapes inside, shelves, counters, a store. She broke into a jog, rain plastering her hair to her face. Her breath came hard, every step squelching deeper into the mud. The dragging was closer now, so close she could almost feel the vibration in her teeth. "Come on," she whispered to herself, pushing harder. The store was only a dozen yards away now. Warm light, dry floor, people. And then, just as she reached the doorway, a shadow slid across the light inside. Someone, something, was already there, standing just beyond the threshold, waiting. Sarah skidded to a stop in the doorway, breath ragged, rainwater streaming from her hair into her eyes. The figure inside stood perfectly still, just beyond the warm spill of light from a single overhead bulb. For a heartbeat, she thought it might be Daniel, but no. Too tall, too thin. Shoulders sloped forward at an unnatural angle, like the weight of its own head was too much. It didn't move, didn't speak, but the way it stood, centered in the doorway, blocking the view beyond, made her feel like she was standing on the edge of something she couldn't see. Behind her, the dragging sound slowed, stopped. The rain seemed to hush. Her skin prickled, the faint throb in her arm flaring sharp, as if whatever had marked her recognized the thing in front of her. The figure shifted, just slightly, and the light caught on its face. It was her double, but not the one from the forest. This one's features were fractured somehow, as if someone had tried to rebuild her face from memory and missed small details. The curve of the cheekbone too sharp, the eyes just a fraction too far apart. It smiled, and the imperfections made it worse. "Sarah," it said, and the voice was hers too, but hollowed out, stripped of warmth. The dragging behind her started again, slow and deliberate. The sound came closer with each word it spoke. "You left the door open." Her stomach dropped. She didn't dare turn around, but she could feel it. The crooked thing in the rain, closing the last few feet between them. Her not-quite double stepped fully into the light, and Sarah realized the glow behind it wasn't from a store at all. The shelves she thought she'd seen were nothing more than warped wooden beams, each one slick and dark, dripping like they'd been pulled from underwater. It extended a hand toward her, not offering, not reaching, just holding it out in the empty space between them. "Come back inside," it said softly, "and I'll close it." The dragging behind her stopped again, close enough that the air at her back felt heavier. Cold seeped into the wet fabric of her jacket, as if something was leaning just out of sight. Sarah's pulse thundered in her ears. "If I step in there," she said, "I don't come back out." Her double tilted its head. "You never came out, Sarah. You've just been walking in circles." She risked a glance to the side and caught it, barely. A thin ribbon of mist curling along the edges of the doorway, seeping out into the rain. The crooked thing shifted behind her, its shadow stretching past her feet into the light. The ends of it writhed, the shape of its limbs bending wrong. Her double smiled wider, and the fractured pieces of her face seemed to shift independently, like they were floating just under her skin. "If you stay out here," it murmured, "it will follow you until you beg to come back." The rain around them had gone silent again, each drop falling in slow, deliberate beats. Sarah's arm ached in rhythm with the sound, and then the crooked thing's hand, wet, boneless, brushed the back of her neck. The touch was soft, almost careful, yet it rooted her in place as surely as chains. A cold seeped from that point of contact, spreading like ink through water, crawling down her spine and into her chest. Her double smile deepened, revealing teeth that didn't quite match in size or shape. "There," it whispered, as though the thing's touch was a promise. "It's already starting." Sarah jerked forward instinctively, breaking the contact, but the cold lingered. A phantom hand still pressed against her skin. The crooked thing didn't lunge or grab. It simply stayed behind her, close enough that she could feel the air shift with its slow, unnatural breaths. The doorway yawned wider now, the warped beams stretching into shadows that didn't match the angle of the light. The faint mist spilling out curled around her boots like curious fingers. Her double took a step backward into the glow. "You can step in now," it said. It'll be easier. The crooked thing's fingers grazed her shoulder, a slow drag that made her muscles twitch. The ache in her arm sharpened, and she realized the faint pulsing under her skin wasn't in sync with her heartbeat anymore. Her double extended its hand again. Or you can keep pretending you've left and let it take you out here instead. The ending's the same. The air was so heavy now it felt like she was breathing through cloth. The rain had stopped entirely, leaving only the faint, wet scent of earth and something older. The crooked thing shifted its weight, the dragging sound returning, but this time, it wasn't moving away, it was circling her. The sound scraped through the mud in a slow, deliberate arc, moving from behind her to her left. Sarah's muscles tensed, every instinct screaming to keep her eyes on the fractured double in the doorway. But the urge to see what was circling was almost unbearable. Her double's gaze flicked to something over Sarah's shoulder, its expression briefly tightening. "It's impatient," it murmured, voice low, almost conspiratorial. "It doesn't usually wait this long." The dragging grew louder, closer, until it stopped just out of her peripheral vision. She could hear the wet shift of its weight, the faint pull of its breath. Sarah swallowed hard, her voice shaking. "What happens if I run?" Her double smiled faintly, tilting its head. "You'll take the sound with you. It'll never stop. Not in daylight, not in crowds, not even in your sleep." The mist curling from the doorway thickened, spilling toward her boots and clinging to her ankles. Her double took another step backward, vanishing waist-deep into the warped glow. "If you're coming," it said, "now's the time." The crooked thing shifted again, moving just enough that she caught a glimpse, long, jointless limbs dragging in the mud, skin like wet paper, and that head hanging low, twitching. It was close enough now that she could see the faint rise and fall of its back as it breathed. Sarah's heart pounded so hard she could taste copper. Her double's voice floated from the doorway, calm but firm. "One step, that's all it takes. Either toward me." The crooked thing's arm began to lift, or toward it. The crooked thing's arm rose higher, its limb unspooling in slow, deliberate inches until the end hovered just beside her cheek. It didn't touch, yet, but she could feel the cold radiating from it, the same marrow-deep chill she'd felt in the water. Her double waited in the doorway, hand still extended, the mist around its fingers curling upward like smoke drawn to heat. "You've carried the mark too long already," it said, voice almost gentle. "Every beat you hear that isn't your own, is it? Rooting deeper." Sarah's breath came fast and shallow. "If I step in," she said, "I'm trapped. If I don't—" Her double's gaze flicked to the crooked thing. "You'll wish you were." The limb beside her cheek twitched, and a sound like wet fabric tearing filled the air. She realized it wasn't the crooked thing's skin. It was the space between them, stretching. Her arm throbbed violently now, the faint red marks pulsing faster than her own heart. She felt a pull, not from her double, not from the crooked thing, but from somewhere deep inside herself, like something was leaning toward the cold. The mist at her feet coiled tighter, gripping her boots. The crooked thing's limb began to lower toward her shoulder, slow but unstoppable. Her double's voice sharpened. "Sarah, choose, now." She clenched her fists, legs trembling, every instinct tearing in opposite directions. When the crooked thing suddenly stopped, its head snapped toward the trees, the dragging sound replaced by a low, rattling hiss. Somewhere in the darkness beyond the road, something else was moving. The crooked thing's body went rigid, its limbs hanging unnaturally still. That rattling hiss deepened, vibrating in Sarah's chest like a distant thunderclap. Her double froze in the doorway, eyes narrowing as it peered into the tree line. "That's not for you," it murmured, its voice tinged with something Sarah hadn't heard from it before, unease. The sound in the woods was different from the dragging, faster, lighter, but no less deliberate. Branches shifted high above, the movement weaving through the canopy like something gliding just out of sight. The crooked thing backed away from Sarah, slow and jerky, its head still angled toward the trees. The cold in the air seemed to thin as it retreated a few paces into the rain-slick road. Sarah's double stepped forward, but not toward her, toward the crooked thing. "It's not your time," it said, its voice low, almost warning. "Go." A deep groan rolled through the forest, and Sarah realized with a jolt that the sound wasn't from the crooked thing at all. It was from the trees themselves, the trunks bending slightly as if bowing under some great weight. The crooked thing gave one last twitch of its limbs before it slid backward into the mist beyond the road, vanishing like a shadow dissolving in water. Sarah's breath came hard, her pulse racing. "What was that?" she demanded. Her double didn't look at her. It was staring into the dark line of trees, its jaw tight. "Something older," it said softly. "And if it's here—" It finally turned its eyes to her, the fractured features shifting unnervingly. "You might wish you'd stepped inside when you had the chance." The sound in the forest was closer now, the branches trembling above them as if something massive was moving through without touching the ground. The movement in the canopy was fluid, almost serpentine, sliding through the trees with a speed that made the rain seem frozen in midair. Sarah craned her neck, catching glimpses. Dark shapes too large to be branches, bending and straightening in unnatural arcs. Her double's fractured face shifted again, the eyes momentarily misaligned before snapping back into place. "Stay still," it said, its voice low, urgent. "If it doesn't see you move, it might pass." But Sarah's heart was pounding too hard, each beat deafening in her ears. "What is it?" she whispered. Her double didn't answer. Its gaze was fixed upward, following the movement overhead as it slowed. The thing in the canopy had stopped directly above them. The air thickened, heavy enough that her breath caught in her throat. A deep, deliberate inhale sounded through the trees, like the forest itself was breathing her in. A shape lowered through the branches, unfolding limb by limb until it hung above the road. It wasn't like the crooked thing. It was larger, smoother, with limbs that looked jointed in too many places. The skin stretched tight over long, sweeping bones. Its head was oval, featureless save for the thin slits that opened and closed along its surface, pulling in air with a slow hiss. The mist curling from the doorway recoiled from it. Her double took a small step backward into the warped glow. "It doesn't belong here," it muttered. "It's following you." The thing above leaned lower, the slits along its head flaring wider. Sarah felt the faintest pull on her skin, as if the air around her was being drawn upward into it. Her double's voice sharpened. "If it takes you, there's no hollow, no return. You're gone." The pull grew stronger, lifting strands of her wet hair. Her double extended its hand again, not in command this time, but in something dangerously close to pleading. "Sarah, now." The pull became a steady current, tugging not just at her hair but at her chest, like invisible threads were being drawn from her heart, straight into the thing's slitted head. Her knees bent involuntarily, her body leaning toward it as if it were gravity itself. "Don't look at it," her double hissed. But Sarah's eyes were already locked on the smooth, alien shape above, its bone-pale surface almost luminous in the dim light. Each slit along its head opened wider, inhaling with a sound that made her ribs ache. The pull grew sharper, and she swore she could feel her thoughts, memories, sliding toward it. The sound of rain on a kitchen window, the smell of old paper, the weight of a familiar hand in hers, all of it drifting upward. Her double stepped forward, mist curling around its legs. "If it finishes," it said urgently, "you'll be nothing but a shell it leaves behind." Sarah clenched her fists, digging her nails into her palms, trying to anchor herself. The marks on her arm flared with a sudden heat, and the crooked thing's cold touch seemed to bloom again under her skin, though it was long gone. The creature above tilted its head, the slits rippling, pulling harder. She stumbled a step forward, boots dragging through the mud. Her double's hand was still outstretched, closer now. "One choice," it said. "Come to me, and I can pull you out of its reach. Stay there, and it will strip you down until there's nothing left to save." The current intensified, the edges of her vision blurred white. The sound of her own heartbeat grew faint, replaced by the slow, deliberate inhalations from above. Somewhere deep in that fading sound, she thought she heard Daniel's voice, faint, urgent, calling her name. And then, without warning, the thing above spoke. Not in words, but in a vibration that rattled her bones, a meaning pressed directly into her skull. "You're already mine." The voice, or whatever passed for it, shuddered through her mind like an earthquake. It wasn't sound, it was ownership, woven into the marrow of her bones. Sarah staggered, clutching her head, her teeth grinding against the pressure. "No," she rasped, but the word felt small, weightless. The thing above inhaled again, the pull now so strong that her toes lifted from the mud. The rain hung suspended in the air between them, each droplet drawn upward like beads of glass. Her double stepped closer, almost within reach now, its fractured features tight with urgency. "You can still choose. You can't fight it alone." "I'm not," Sarah gasped, forcing her boots back down into the mud. "Alone." The heat in her marked arm flared, blinding in its intensity. It wasn't hers, not exactly. It was the crooked thing's mark, the residue of something that refused to let go. She felt the faintest echo of its slow, dragging persistence inside her, not pulling her up, but anchoring her to the earth. The creature above paused, its slits narrowing, sensing resistance. Sarah dug her heels deeper, her whole body trembling as she forced her head down, breaking eye contact, or whatever passed for it, with the thing. The pull weakened just slightly, enough for her to draw a ragged breath. Her double's hand was inches from hers now. "Sarah." But before it could finish, a sharp crack echoed through the trees. Something massive shifted above, the branches swaying violently as if struck. The pale creature recoiled, the slits along its head snapping shut in a single slicing motion. The pull vanished. Sarah collapsed to her knees, gasping, the air flooding back around her. Her double whirled toward the trees, eyes narrowing. "That shouldn't have scared it," it muttered. And then, from deep in the forest, the dragging started again. Only this time it was running. The sound was wrong now. Too fast, too heavy. The dragging no longer a patient scrape, but a frantic pounding pull through the mud. The trees shook with each impact, leaves shivering as if in anticipation. Sarah forced herself to stand, her legs unsteady. "It's coming for me?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. Her double's fractured features were unreadable. "It's coming for it." The pale creature above shifted, its long limbs folding inward like a spider retreating. It made no sound now, no slow inhalations, only a tense, waiting stillness. The branches around it trembled as the dragging drew closer. Sarah turned toward the sound just as the crooked thing burst from the mist at the edge of the road. It was different than before, taller, leaner. Its limbs moved with terrible precision, each step driving deep into the mud before ripping free with a wet snap. The sinew trailing behind it lashed like a whip, flinging streaks of black water into the air. And yet, its head was still low, still twitching. The sight of it should have frozen her blood, but now there was something else in its movement. Purpose. The pale creature's head tilted slightly toward it, the slits along its surface reopening, but this time the inhalation wasn't slow, it was sharp, hungry. The crooked thing stopped in the middle of the road, directly between Sarah and her double. Its limbs flexed, sinking into a stance that was almost human, but not quite. The forest fell silent. Her double stepped closer to Sarah without taking its eyes off the two figures. "You don't want to be here for this." But Sarah couldn't move. Her marked arm throbbed in time with the crooked thing's twitching head, the heat and cold battling under her skin. The pale creature made the first move, lunging downward, limbs unfolding in a blur. The crooked thing didn't flinch. It surged forward to meet it. The impact was a sound Sarah felt in her chest more than she heard, like a tree splitting under its own weight. Mud and rain exploded into the air as the two collided, limbs tangling in a blur of bone white and sinew gray. The pale creature's slits flared wide, pulling hard, trying to strip the crooked thing apart thread by thread. But the crooked thing was faster than it had any right to be, its jointless limbs coiling around the pale body, dragging it down into the muck with relentless drowning weight. Sarah stumbled backward as their struggle churned the road into a chasm of mud. Every movement was wrong. Too many angles, too much flexibility, like watching two sets of shadows trying to strangle each other. Her double caught her arm, yanking her toward the warped doorway. Now, while it's distracted. But the heat in her marked arm surged again, searing hot this time. The crooked thing's pull on her wasn't gone. It was calling. She looked back just as the pale creature's head snapped toward her mid-fight. One slit widened into a black void, and she felt that same upward tug, brief, sharp. But the crooked thing wrenched it away, dragging the pale thing's face into the mud with a force that made the ground shudder. "Sarah!" Her double's voice was sharp now, urgent. "You won't get another chance." The crooked thing wrapped itself fully around the pale creature, forcing it toward the mist at the edge of the road. Its limbs moved with the slow inevitability of a tide pulling something under. And then, in the chaos, Sarah saw it. The crooked thing's head tilted just enough for one blind indentation to face her directly. She couldn't explain how, but she knew it wanted her to follow. The realization rooted her to the spot. Rain ran cold down her back, but the heat in her marked arm throbbed like a pulse that wasn't hers, each beat tugging her forward. Her double's grip tightened. "Don't even think about it," it warned, voice sharp now, the calm veneer gone. "You step into that mist with it, and you'll never come back the same." But Sarah's eyes stayed locked on the crooked thing. Even as it wrestled the pale creature, it kept that blind indentation turned toward her, holding her in place like a hook in her ribs. The pale creature writhed, limbs slicing through the mud in long arcs, but the crooked thing clung tighter, its sinew threads winding deeper into bone-white skin. The forest seemed to press closer around them, the shadows deepening until the only light was the warped glow from the doorway and the faint shimmer of rain on their bodies. Sarah took a step forward. Her double yanked her back hard, nearly pulling her off her feet. "No, you don't understand what it's offering." Sarah turned on it, her voice trembling. "And you do?" Her double's fractured face flickered, the pieces not quite aligning for a moment. "I know enough to tell you this. You think you're choosing. You're not. It's already chosen you." Another surge in her arm, hotter, stronger. This time she did feel herself leaning toward the fight, toward the mist, toward it. The pale creature let out a soundless, violent shudder, and for a split second its pull cut through everything. The crooked thing's grip, her double's voice, even her own thoughts. The world narrowed to two choices: step forward into the mist with the crooked thing, or let the pale creature take her where nothing returned. The crooked thing jerked the pale one another foot closer to the tree line. Its blind face stayed on her, waiting. Sarah's breath came fast, each inhale shallow, tasting of wet soil and something coppery. Her double's fingers dug into her arm, but its grip felt distant, like she was already halfway gone. The crooked thing reached the edge of the road where the mist thickened, roiling upward as though eager to swallow both creatures whole. Its limbs were wrapped so tightly around the pale one that the sinew seemed to disappear into its bone-white skin. The pale creature fought harder now, slits snapping open and shut with sharp bursts of suction, trying to pull the crooked thing apart. Each time it inhaled, Sarah felt a faint tug inside her skull, like a thread coming loose. The heat in her marked arm blazed so fiercely she gasped. She took another step forward, boots sinking into the mud. Her double's voice cut through the roar of rain. "Sarah, if you follow it, you'll belong to both of them before this is done." She wrenched her arm free, the sudden movement throwing her off balance. "Then maybe that's better than—" A deafening crack split the air as the crooked thing drove the pale one down into the mud, with enough force to send ripples through the ground under her feet. The forest seemed to hold its breath. Then, slowly, the crooked thing began to rise. It still held the pale creature pinned, but its head was lifting toward her. That blind indentation tilted in a slow, deliberate arc, as if marking her exact position. The mist around its legs curled toward her, threads of it stretching like reaching hands. Her double stepped between them, blocking her view. "Last chance," it said, voice low, every word sharp. "Turn, walk away, forget it." But over its shoulder, Sarah saw the crooked thing move one limb free. It stretched toward her. Not to grab, but to beckon. The gesture was impossibly slow, deliberate, each jointless inch unfurling like a ribbon in water. It wasn't the kind of reach meant to seize her. It was an invitation. Her pulse pounded in her ears. The rain felt heavier now, or maybe it was just the weight of the moment pressing down. Her double didn't turn to look. It stood rigid, blocking most of the view, but the tension in its shoulders betrayed that it knew what the crooked thing was doing. "Don't," it said flatly. "You think you'll follow it and come back. You won't. You'll wake up somewhere else entirely, and you won't even remember this road." But Sarah's eyes locked on the limb behind it. Even in the warped light, she could see sinew sliding under that wet, paper-thin skin, twitching faintly in rhythm with the throb in her arm. The pale creature twisted violently under the crooked thing's weight, one long limb slicing the mud in an arc that sent clumps spraying toward the road. The sound it made wasn't breathing this time. It was a low, resonant hum that made the rain vibrate against her skin. The crooked thing bent closer to it, tightening its hold, but its free limb never stopped its slow beckoning. Her double took a half step forward, forcing Sarah to move back toward the doorway. "You don't understand. There are worse doors than this one, and that," it jerked its head toward the mist, "leads to all of them." Another pulse of heat tore through her marked arm, stronger than before. It was almost unbearable now, but underneath the pain was something else. Clarity. She could feel the crooked thing's pull as clearly as her own heartbeat. It wasn't just asking her to follow, it was telling her she belonged there. The pale creature lunged upward suddenly, and the crooked thing snapped its head toward Sarah. No more beckoning. This time it reached. The limb shot forward, slicing through the mist like a whip. Her double reacted instantly, shoving Sarah backward so hard she stumbled into the warped doorway's frame. The wood, or whatever it was, felt wrong under her palms, too soft and warm for something that looked like timber. The crooked thing's limb didn't strike her. It stopped inches away, quivering, the sinew vibrating like it was holding back an impossible force. The pale creature took advantage of the pause, twisting violently beneath it. A slit along its head flared wide, and the air between Sarah and the mist wavered as though heat were rising from the mud. Her double stepped sideways, positioning itself between her and both creatures. "Enough," it said sharply, though whether it was speaking to her, the crooked thing, or the pale one, Sarah couldn't tell. But the crooked thing didn't pull back. Its blind face remained fixed on her, the thread-like mist from its body still curling toward her boots. She realized with a sick twist in her gut that the heat in her arm wasn't fading anymore. It was growing, surging with every second she stood here. The pale creature lunged again, trying to coil around the crooked thing, but the crooked thing's reach toward her didn't falter. Her double turned just enough to meet her eyes. If you take its hand, you leave this place. But if you stay, you are the thing it has to protect. You think it's fighting for you now? Wait until you're the reason it can't let go. Sarah's breath came hard, her body trembling. She could feel her decision solidifying, not with logic, but with the deep, instinctive certainty that whichever way she stepped, she was crossing a line she could never uncross. The crooked thing's limb inched closer, mist spilling over the doorway's threshold, and then, without warning, the pale creature's slits flared wide. And it spoke in a voice that was hers. "Sarah, don't." The sound rooted her where she stood. It wasn't an imitation. It was exactly her voice. Same tone, same breath pattern, even the slight hitch she had when her throat tightened. Her double froze, its head tilting slightly toward the pale creature. For the first time, Sarah saw something close to unease in its fractured features. The pale thing's slits pulsed, each one opening and closing in a staggered rhythm, almost like speech. The words came again, more insistent. "Sarah, don't go with it." Her skin crawled. How do you know my name?" she demanded, though part of her didn't want to hear the answer. The pale creature's head twitched toward her, even as the crooked thing's sinew coiled tighter around its body. "Because you're already there," it said, in her voice again. "And you've been calling for help." The rain seemed to thin, sound fading, until the only thing she could hear was the wet shift of the creatures and the pounding in her ears. Her double stepped closer to her, low enough for its voice to drop into something almost human. "Don't listen. That's not you. It's what it wants you to believe." But Sarah's stomach turned. The pale thing's words hadn't felt like a lie. They'd felt like something she'd thought before, half remembered, like a dream she'd woken from too early. The crooked thing suddenly wrenched the pale one's head back, exposing the long stretch of its neck. The slits along its face snapped shut all at once, cutting off the voice. Her double reached for her arm. "Time's over. You walk away now." But Sarah's feet wouldn't move. The mark in her arm burned with heat and cold all at once, like two tides pulling in opposite directions. The crooked thing's head turned toward her again, that blank indentation aimed like a promise. The pale creature twisted violently, one slit forcing open just enough to gasp a final word in her voice. "Please." The word hung in the air, thin but sharp enough to cut through every other sound. Sarah's breath caught, her chest tightening as if something deep inside her had recognized the plea. The crooked thing didn't react to it, not the way she expected. Instead of silencing the pale creature, it shifted its weight, pulling them both deeper toward the mist at the road's edge. The movement was deliberate, almost ritualistic, as if it had been heading there all along. Her double's grip on her arm tightened. "If you follow, you won't be saving anyone," it said, voice sharp but laced with something colder. "Fear. You'll just be giving it another you to keep." The rain began again, slow at first, then harder, pattering against her skin in heavy drops that seemed to distort the edges of the scene. The mist was thicker now, curling higher, swallowing the crooked thing's lower limbs. The pale creature thrashed, but its head twisted once more toward Sarah. "It's not protecting you," it said in her voice, words breaking under strain. "It's keeping you here, while the rest of you—" The crooked thing jerked it downward, cutting the sentence in half. Her double leaned in, its mismatched eyes locking on hers. "I can pull you inside and close the door. It'll be over. You'll be safe. Safe." The word felt distant, almost meaningless now. Sarah's gaze flicked between the warped doorway behind her, the crooked thing dragging its prize toward the mist, and the pale creature's flaring slits. Every pull in her arm screamed for her to step forward, Every instinct told her she'd regret it. The crooked thing's free limb stretched toward her again, not to beckon this time, but open, palm up, waiting. The pale creature's voice came one last time, soft but certain. "Sarah, you already did this." The words slipped under her skin like ice water. Already did this. For a moment, Sarah swore she could feel the memory, the weight of rain on her shoulders. The crooked thing's hand opened before her, her own foot lifting from the ground. But the image shattered before she could see where it led. Her double's hand gripped her tighter. "Don't think about it," it said, low and urgent. "That's how it gets in." The pale creature twisted, its movements jerky and desperate now. Its slits flared wide, and the rain around Sarah stuttered in midair, droplets trembling like they were caught in a breath that wasn't hers. "You've been here," it said, her voice fraying at the edges. "Over and over. You never walk away." The crooked thing pulled again, dragging the pale creature's head into the mist until only the top half of its face was visible. The sinew around its body tightened, trembling under strain, but its open hand towards Sarah never wavered. The heat in her arm was unbearable now, boiling, demanding. She felt it not just as pain, but as direction, like a compass that refused to point anywhere else. Her double's fractured features flickered. "Last chance, Sarah. Choose the door and forget. Or follow and find out why you've never left." She stared at that open hand. It didn't look human, but the shape of it, wide palm, long fingers, was almost comforting in its stillness. The pale creature's voice came again, hoarse, shaking. "If you go, you won't come back the same. But if you don't..." Its words broke off, replaced by a violent inhale from deep in the mist, pulling at Sarah's hair and clothes, tugging her forward. Her boots slid an inch in the mud. She realized she was already leaning toward the crooked thing. Her double stepped directly into her line of sight, blocking the crooked thing's outstretched hand. The sudden barrier made her dizzy, like something vital had been cut from view, and for a moment she hated it for standing there. "You don't understand what it means to take that step," it said, voice tight. "You think it's a choice, but it's just a loop. You've been making it for longer than you can imagine." The rain blurred the edges of everything. Beyond her double shoulder, she caught fleeting glimpses of the struggle, pale limbs flailing, sinew winding tighter, mist swallowing them inch by inch. Her marked arm pulsed again, and in that pulse she saw it, a flash of herself inside the mist. Her own face, eyes wide, hand pressed to something smooth and warm in the dark. She couldn't see what was beyond her, but she felt the same pull she felt now. Her double's fingers dug into her shoulders. "If you follow, you'll meet that version of you, and neither of you will know which one is real." A deep groan rolled from the mist, bending the trees, rattling her teeth. The crooked thing's hand broke through the swirl of white, closer than before, close enough that she could see tiny, thread-like movements under its skin, almost like breathing. The pale creature's voice came again, fractured and fading. "Sarah, please, this time, walk away." Her double yanked her half a step back toward the doorway. "It's now or never." But Sarah's eyes were locked on the crooked thing's hand. It was steady, waiting, and she knew, down to the marrow, that if she touched it, she'd finally understand why she'd been here before. Her boot lifted from the mud, lifted. The sound of her boot breaking suction from the mud was deafening in the silence. Her double's grip tightened instantly, but she didn't look at it. Her gaze stayed fixed on that waiting hand in the mist. The crooked thing didn't move closer. It didn't need to. The mist curled eagerly toward her as she stepped, parting like water to make a path. Her double's voice broke into something raw, almost human. "Sarah, don't. You think you're going to get answers, but all you'll get is another version of yourself, lost in there." Her pulse roared in her ears. Maybe that's where I already am, she whispered. The pale creature writhed, slits snapping open in a last violent effort. Her own voice spilled out of it again, ragged. If you take its hand, you'll never know which. Use the one that leaves. The crooked thing's palm opened wider, its long fingers twitching once. Not beckoning now, welcoming. The mark on her arm blazed, sending heat through every nerve. It wasn't pain anymore. It was recognition. She took another step, and her double's hand slipped from her shoulder. It didn't lunge to grab her again. It just stopped, watching. Go then, it said, the words heavy. But remember, I didn't push you. You chose. The crooked thing loomed now, its faceless head lowering until it was level with hers. The threads of mist around its hand reached for her fingers like strands of hair drifting in water. Her own hand rose, hesitant, trembling, but drawn as if pulled by gravity. The pale creature let out a final sound, half her voice, half something older. Before the crooked thing yanked it fully into the mist, Sarah's fingertips brushed its palm. The instant her skin met its palm, the world folded in on itself. The rain, the road, the forest, all peeled away in silence, like wet paper sliding off glass. The crooked thing's touch wasn't cold or warm. It was inside, threading through her arm and spine, pulling her forward without moving her feet. She gasped, but no air filled her lungs. The mist swallowed sound and sensation until there was nothing but a slow, rhythmic pulse. Not hers, not its, but theirs. Shapes began to emerge in the white, faint outlines of figures that looked like her, dozens, no, hundreds, scattered in the haze. Some stood motionless, staring into nothing. Others moved in slow, looping motions, turning, reaching, stepping forward and back, endlessly repeating gestures without completion. Her hand was still in the crooked thing's, but it was different now. The skin beneath her fingers pulsed like it was breathing. Its faceless head was inches from hers, and though it had no eyes, she felt it watching. A figure stepped from the mist ahead, her own face, her own clothes, mud-stained, rain-heavy. But the eyes were empty, skin pale like it hadn't seen the sun in years. It stopped in front of her, head tilting. Its lips moved, but no sound came. The crooked thing's grip on her hand tightened, not painful, but final. Her double's voice echoed faintly from somewhere far away, almost smothered by the pulse in her head. This is where it starts, and ends, and starts again. The other Sarah reached out, and the moment their fingertips touched, memories crashed over her, flashes of the road, the fight, the plea, over and over, each time slightly different, each ending in the same white mist. Her knees buckled. The crooked thing didn't let go. Neither did the other her. The second her, the one with the hollow eyes, leaned closer until their foreheads touched. The contact wasn't warm. It wasn't even physical exactly. It was like pressing her mind against a mirror that refused to reflect her back. Images spilled into her in jagged bursts. Her boot sinking into the mud. The crooked thing's open hand. Her double blocking the way. Her pale doppelganger pleading in her voice. Each scene flickered in and out, repeating in different orders, sometimes with small changes. Her double reaching too late, the pale creature gone entirely, the crooked thing dragging her into the mist instead of beckoning. The other Sarah's lips moved again, still without sound. But now she understood, not through hearing, but through an intrusive, undeniable knowing. We've been here forever. Her stomach turned, but she couldn't pull away. The crooked thing's grip had spread up her arm now, not with fingers, but with something inside her veins, filling her like a second bloodstream. The hollow-eyed Sarah pressed her palm flat against Sarah's chest. At the exact moment they touched, the pulse in the air synced with her heartbeat, so perfectly matched, it felt like she was no longer sure which was which. The mist shifted around them. Dozens of other Sarahs turned to watch, their faces blank, their bodies perfectly still. Somewhere in the haze, something moved, tall, pale, jointed too many times. The pale creature. But it wasn't fighting the crooked thing here. It was just watching. The hollow-eyed Sarah leaned back, tilting her head toward it. And in that moment, Sarah understood. It wasn't here to take her away from the crooked thing. It was here to take her back. The realization snapped through her like a live wire. The pale creature stepped forward, moving with that slow, deliberate precision that made the air seem to thicken around it. Its slits opened one by one, and this time she could hear the breath it drew. Not the pull of air, but a deep, resonant inhale that seemed to come from inside her. The hollow-eyed Sarah turned fully toward it, hand still pressed over Sarah's heart, holding her in place. The pressure wasn't physical. It was like being locked in a memory that refused to release her. The crooked thing shifted behind her, limbs coiling just slightly tighter. A warning more than a restraint. Its faceless head lowered toward the pale creature, but it didn't lunge. Not here. Not in this place. Sarah's voice, her real one, finally broke through, hoarse and trembling. "What is this?" The hollow-eyed version of her smiled faintly, though the eyes never changed. "This is where you wait," the thought pressed into her head, "until it's time to start again." Her marked arm flared with heat, and for the first time since she'd stepped into the mist, she felt her own body fighting, not to flee, but to remember. The pale creature stepped closer. One slit widened into that black, endless void, and she felt the tug again, sharp, pulling something deep inside her toward it. The hollow-eyed Sarah's fingers dug harder into her chest. "If you go with it," the thought said, "you'll be emptied and brought back to the road. If you stay here, you'll be filled until you can't hold anymore." The crooked thing's grip on her arm tightened in agreement, or maybe in warning. The pale creature stopped just a step away. That void where its eye should have been tilted toward her face. And in her own voice it whispered aloud this time, "Ready to go home." The words slipped through her like a hook in the water, catching on something deep and unseen. Home. Her knees weakened and she swayed toward the pale creature without meaning to. The air between them pulsed, a faint vibration traveling up her spine, urging her closer. The crooked thing's grip on her arm shifted, not pulling her back, but anchoring her in place. She could feel it through the heat in her mark, the unspoken message. "This is not yours to take." The hollow-eyed Sarah still stood with her palm pressed to Sarah's chest, her touch a constant thrumming reminder of the pulse they now shared. "You can go," the thought came again, quieter this time, "but you won't remember why you left. Not until you're here again." The pale creature leaned forward, the void of its slit stretching wider. The pull intensified until Sarah's teeth ached, her thoughts unraveling into static. She could see something inside that darkness, a faint shape, a flash of movement, like a door in the distance of a dream. Her lips parted. "What's there?" she asked, but her voice barely existed. The pale creature's answer was instant, threaded with certainty. The first time. The crooked thing moved then, not violently, but with a slow, decisive curl of its limb across her torso, pulling her a fraction closer to itself. The mist thickened around its frame, shrouding them from the pale creature's gaze. The hollow-eyed Sarah tilted her head, as though listening to something far away. Then her hand slipped from Sarah's chest, leaving behind an echo of the shared pulse that didn't fade. For the first time, the two creatures looked at each other. No movement, no sound, just a stillness so heavy it felt like the mist itself held its breath. Sarah realized then, with a sick, sinking certainty, that she was the reason they hadn't moved yet. They were waiting for her choice. Her mouth was dry, her breath shallow. The mist pressed against her skin like damp cloth, closing her in with both of them. No road, no doorway, just endless white and the silent weight of their attention. The crooked thing's faceless head dipped closer, its grip on her arm shifting again, not restraining, not pulling, just holding, as if it were afraid she might vanish if it let go. The heat in her mark pulsed in time with that echoing rhythm in her chest. The pale creature didn't move forward. It didn't have to. That void in its slit seemed closer with every blink, the pull from it a constant thread winding through her thoughts. She could still see something faint inside it, shifting slowly, beckoning, not like the crooked thing's open hand, but like a light glimpsed under deep water. Her hollow-eyed self stepped back into the mist, vanishing halfway until only her head and shoulders remained. Either way, the thought pressed into her mind, you'll return here. The only question is who you'll be when you do. The words lingered long after she faded completely, leaving Sarah alone with the two beings. The crooked thing's grip tightened, subtle but firm. She didn't hear words from it, but she felt something, less a thought, more an instinct, that told her staying meant keeping what she was now. The pale creature's pull intensified, the void widening just enough for her to glimpse the flicker of herself inside, younger, untouched, as though it could return her to a version before the road, before the mark, before the loops. Her chest rose and fell faster. If she stayed, she would keep her memory but remain here. If she went, she might lose everything, except maybe the illusion of a life before all this. The mist coiled around her legs like it was ready to move the second she decided. And for the first time, Sarah realized they wouldn't wait forever. The pressure in the air shifted, subtle at first, then mounting fast, like the moment before a storm splits open. The crooked thing's hold on her arm became unyielding, the sinew beneath its skin twitching as though something inside it was bracing. The pale creature leaned closer, the void of its slit stretching wide enough that she could see the faint shimmer of movement deep within. A flicker like sunlight on water, but colder, sharper. Sarah's breath hitched. The pull from that darkness wrapped around her thoughts until it felt like the only steady thing left. She imagined stepping into it, imagined the cool relief of the pull erasing the heat in her marked arm, imagined waking somewhere else entirely, with no loops, no road, no double. But then, in the space between one heartbeat and the next, she felt something else. A second pull, not from the pale creature's void, but from the crooked thing's grip, steady, grounded, holding her here in the mist. Its presence was heavy and immovable, a quiet force that didn't erase but endured. The mist churned around her legs, rising higher, swirling in tight spirals. Her heartbeat hammered in her ears, but beneath it was the steady pulse she'd felt since the moment she touched the crooked thing's hand. Somewhere behind her, she thought she heard her double's voice, faint, muffled, almost as if through walls. Choose, or it chooses for you. The pale creature's void brightened faintly, the shape inside it moving closer, clearer now. It was her, but smiling. The crooked thing's faceless head tilted toward her, and though it made no sound, she felt the meaning settle into her chest. You will not be the same. The mist climbed to her waist. Time was gone. Sarah's lips parted. She stepped toward the crooked thing. The pale creature's void flared wide in sudden protest, the pull from it spiking so sharply she staggered, but the crooked thing's grip yanked her fully against its frame. The mist around them convulsed, swirling in violent spirals that lashed against her skin like cold whips. Somewhere in that white chaos, she thought she saw the hollow-eyed Sarah again, watching without expression as the scene unfolded. The crooked thing coiled its limbs around her, not trapping but enclosing. The heat from her marked arm surged into her chest, spreading outward until her whole body throbbed with it. It wasn't pain now, it was possession. The pale creature let out a sharp, sucking gasp that rattled the mist, its slits snapping open and shut as if trying to drag her away through sheer will. The void inside it flickered violently, the smiling version of herself dissolving into darkness. The crooked thing shifted, pulling her deeper into the mist. But this time the world didn't peel away, it folded inward. The whiteness compressed, becoming tight, claustrophobic, until there was only the sound of that shared pulse and the faint rustle of sinew tightening. She could feel it now, not just holding her, but weaving her into something, threading its essence through hers, binding them together in ways that felt irreversible. The pale creature lurched forward in one last desperate reach, its limbs slicing through the closing space. Its void met her gaze one final time, and for a heartbeat she thought she saw herself again, only this time, screaming. Then the crooked thing drew her past the last layer of mist, and the pale creature vanished. The air went still. The pulse in her body was the only sound, and when she looked down, the mark on her arm was gone. Her skin, where the mark had been, was smooth, pale, and cold to the touch, as if nothing had ever been there at all. But the absence wasn't relief. It was hollow. The crooked thing released her slowly, its limbs unwinding with the careful precision of something setting down a fragile object. She staggered a step back, her boots meeting solid ground, though the mist still curled in lazy spirals at her ankles. The air here was different, denser, muffled, like a room with walls too far away to see. The whiteness stretched on, but it no longer felt empty. Shapes moved in the distance, slow and deliberate, their outlines wrong in ways her mind couldn't fully hold on to. She turned to face the crooked thing. It loomed taller now, its faceless head bent toward her like it was studying her reaction. "What am I now?" she asked, the words barely more than a whisper. No answer came, but she didn't need one. The steady pulse she'd carried since touching its hand was still there. Only now it was entirely hers. No shared beat, no foreign rhythm. Just her own, reshaped. From somewhere deeper in the mist came a sound, soft at first, then sharper. A voice. Her voice. "Sarah!" She spun toward it, her breath catching. A figure stepped forward, another her, but not hollow-eyed, not blank. This one looked exactly as she had the first day she'd walked the road, before the mark, before the mist. Her stomach turned cold. The crooked thing shifted beside her, its limb curling down just far enough to brush her shoulder, like a warning. The other Sarah froze when she saw it. Her eyes widened, fear plain and sharp. Then she looked at Sarah, not the crooked thing, and whispered, "You're in the way." The words struck harder than they should have. The other Sarah's gaze wasn't pleading. It was focused, almost accusing. Her hands curled into fists, like she'd been walking toward something for a long time and had just found the obstacle that would stop her. Sarah's throat tightened. In the way of what? The crooked thing's presence loomed heavier beside her. It didn't move, but she felt its attention sharpen, the mist at her feet slowing in its restless swirls. The other Sarah stepped closer, her boots making no sound on the unseen ground. "Of me leaving," she said simply, as if it were the only truth that mattered. "I've come this far before. You weren't here then, but now." She trailed off, her eyes flicking toward the crooked thing. "Now I don't think it's going to let me past you." A knot formed in Sarah's stomach, the pulse inside her chest, the one that was hers now, throbbed in answer. "You can't," she said before she'd even thought about it. The words felt like instinct, like something planted deep enough to bloom without permission. The other Sarah's face hardened. "That's not your choice." Somewhere beyond them, shapes in the mist shifted, slow and tall, like watching trees uproot themselves and move without sound. The crooked thing finally stirred, one long limb lowering between them, not as a shield but as a line neither could cross. Sarah glanced at it, then back at the version of herself standing so close she could see the strain in her jaw. The other Sarah leaned forward, voice low. "You're not the first me it's kept, but you will be the reason I finally get out." And before Sarah could speak, she reached for her arm. Fingers closed around Sarah's forearm, warm human fingers so startlingly familiar they cut through the cold in her chest. The moment the other Sarah touched her, the pulse inside her body stuttered like it had been knocked out of rhythm. Heat surged from the point of contact, not the searing, unnatural kind she'd known from the mark, but a deeper, more insistent pull, like a tether being yanked from the inside. The crooked thing reacted instantly. Its limb curled tighter between them, but it didn't push her away. Instead, it wrapped the other Sarah's wrist, the sinew beneath its skin shifting like ropes under strain. The other Sarah's grip didn't falter. Her eyes locked on Sarah's, fierce and unblinking. "I can pull you out," she said, voice low but certain. "But if I do, you take my place." Sarah's breath caught. "And if I say no?" Her double's lips pressed into a thin line. "Then you both stay." The pulse inside her chest quickened, a frantic rhythm that wasn't entirely her own anymore. She could feel the crooked thing's presence in it, its hold woven so tightly she couldn't tell where she ended and it began. The mist thickened, coiling around their knees like restless water. Those tall shapes in the distance were closer now, watching, waiting. The other Sarah's voice dropped to a near whisper. "It can't keep us both. If I take you with me, you'll remember what's outside. You'll remember everything." Sarah's fingers twitched against her will, curling toward the other her's grip. The crooked thing's faceless head tilted down, and for the first time she felt its intent, not in words but in the heavy certainty it pressed into her. "If she leaves, you will never be whole again." The heat in her arm began to build again. She had to choose. The heat spread fast, up her arm, into her chest, threading into her ribs like it was trying to anchor her in place. The other Sarah's grip only tightened, the pull in the opposite direction growing just as strong, dragging at her bones. Two currents surged through her, tearing her in half. The crooked thing leaned closer, its faceless head hovering just above hers. She didn't hear sound, but she felt the weight of it in her mind. Dense, wordless emotion. Not rage, not fear. Something heavier, something that felt like claim. The other Sarah stepped closer, their faces only inches apart now. Her eyes were bright, alive, sharp with urgency. "If you stay, you'll forget again. You'll become what it wants you to be. You'll think this place is all there is." Her breath was warm against Sarah's face, real in a way that made her chest ache. The crooked thing's limbs slid from the other Sarah's wrist and curled possessively around Sarah's shoulders, pulling her back just enough that her feet scraped against the ground. The pulse inside her chest thundered, pounding out the truth. "Here, you are mine." The mist swirled violently now, rising to her waist. The tall shapes in the distance leaned closer, as though scenting the decision before it was made. The other Sarah's voice broke through it all, fierce and pleading at once. "This is the only time I've reached you before you forgot. If you let me go now, I'll never find you again." The heat in her arm was nearly blinding. Her vision flickered white at the edges. Somewhere beneath the noise, she realized something. Either choice would hurt. Either choice would change her. Her fingers closed around the other Sarah's hand. She opened her mouth. "Take me with you." The words came out raw, torn from her throat like they'd been waiting there for years. The other Sarah's eyes widened, just slightly, but she didn't hesitate. Her grip locked like steel, and the pull toward her doubled, a force that felt like it was trying to peel Sarah out of her own skin. The crooked thing reacted in an instant, its limbs coiled tight around her waist and chest, the heat in her body spiking into something unbearable, not just in her arm but flooding every nerve. The pulse inside her stammered, faltered, then slammed back into rhythm, faster than it had ever been. The mist turned violent, thrashing like a living storm. The tall shapes at its edges began to move in, their forms bending and stretching with unnatural slowness, their attention fixed on her. The other Sarah gritted her teeth, pulling harder. "Don't fight me, fight it," she said through clenched jaw. Sarah gasped, the air tasting thick, metallic. The crooked thing's faceless head lowered until it pressed against the side of hers, and the weight of its presence crashed into her mind again. This time it wasn't silent. "If you leave, you won't know what you are anymore." The words, if they were words, reverberated through her ribs, steady and absolute. The other Sarah yanked again, hard enough that Sarah felt something in her chest tear. She cried out, though she wasn't sure if the sound was from her throat or somewhere deeper. For a split second, the crooked thing's hold slipped, not loosening entirely, but faltering enough for the pull toward her double to surge forward like a riptide. The tall shapes began to close in, their features still lost to the mist, their movement deliberate, as if ready to catch whoever didn't make it through. Sarah's feet shifted. The decision was no longer in her head, it was in her body. Her body lurched toward the other Sarah before her mind could catch up. The crooked thing's limbs strained, tightening, but the grip wasn't infinite. It was stretching. The tear inside her chest widened, a hot, splitting pain that sent her vision strobing between white mist and jagged flashes of something else. Her standing on the road, rain in her eyes. Her waking in a room she didn't recognize. Her own face looking at her through a glass surface, mouth moving but no sound coming. The other Sarah's arms wrapped around her now, locking her in. The pull intensified, yanking not at her skin, but at the space she occupied, as though peeling her out of this place entirely. The crooked thing let out a sound, not a voice, not even a growl, but a deep, hollow resonance that shook through her bones. The mist buckled around them, swirling high enough to obscure the looming shapes at the edges. The heat in her body surged one last time, spiking until it was almost unbearable. Then, something snapped. It wasn't bone. It wasn't anything she could name. But the crooked thing's hold fell away like frayed rope, its limbs recoiling into the mist. The other Sarah yanked her forward, and for an instant she felt weightless. No ground beneath her, no pulse in her chest, just the cold rush of movement through a space that wasn't meant to be crossed. The mist thinned ahead, the shapes at its edges jerking back as if recoiling from what was about to happen. And then, they broke through. Air hit her lungs like the first breath after drowning. The sound of rain was real again, sharp and immediate. The road was under her feet, but she wasn't holding the other Sarah anymore. Her hands were empty. The space beside her, where the other Sarah had been a heartbeat ago, was just gone. The rain fell steady, pattering against wet asphalt. The trees on either side of the road stood silent, their leaves trembling in the wind. The world felt flat, as if sound itself had been drained a little too thin. Sarah turned in a slow circle, scanning the road, the tree line, even the ditches that cut along either side. Nothing. No crooked thing, no pale creature, no double. The only sign that anything had happened was the pounding in her chest, and even that was off. The rhythm wasn't quite hers anymore. It was too deep, too steady, like something was listening from the inside. She looked down at her arm. No mark. But when she brushed her fingers over the skin, she felt a faint vibration beneath it, a hum that matched the alien beat in her chest. A whisper slid through her mind then, quiet enough that she almost thought it was memory. "You left something behind." Her stomach tightened. She thought of the other Sarah's face in those last moments, urgent, alive, and realized she didn't know which of them had truly crossed over. Far down the road, a figure appeared in the rain. It walked slowly, deliberately. Her first thought was, it's her. The other Sarah. Her second thought, colder, was, what if it's not? She stayed where she was, the rain dripping from her hair into her eyes, until the figure came close enough for her to see its face. It was smiling, and it was hers. The smile didn't reach its eyes. They were steady, unblinking, locked on her like they'd been searching for her all along. Sarah took a step back without meaning to. The road behind her stretched empty into the gray curtain of rain, but her feet felt anchored, like retreating wasn't truly an option. The other her stopped a few paces away. The rain should have been soaking her hair, her clothes, but it seemed to roll off without clinging, sliding away as though she wasn't entirely here. "Looks like you made it," she said. Her voice was warm, familiar, but every syllable landed with a weight Sarah couldn't name. Sarah swallowed. "Where's the other one? The me that..." The double's head tilted, the smile widening just enough to sharpen. "You mean you? She's still there, that's the thing about leaving. Not all of you comes back." The hum in Sarah's arm deepened, vibrating up into her shoulder. She rubbed at it, but the sensation didn't fade. Her double's gaze flicked to the motion, and her smile softened into something almost pitying. "You feel it, don't you? The piece you left. It's not gone, it's just waiting. You'll hear it again when it's ready." Sarah's voice came out thinner than she wanted. "And you? What are you now?" The double stepped closer, and for the first time Sarah saw it, the faint shimmer along her edges, like she was walking under a heat mirage. "I'm what's left when you stop fighting, and I'm here to make sure you don't try going back." The hum in her arm spiked hard enough to make her knees lock. She realized with a sick twist in her gut. It wasn't warning her, it was answering her. The double's smile returned, calm and certain. "Come on, we've got a long walk ahead." The rain felt heavier now, each drop striking like a measured drumbeat. Her double turned and began walking down the road without looking back, her pace steady, unhurried, like she already knew Sarah would follow. Sarah stayed rooted for a few seconds longer, heart hammering against that strange, deeper rhythm inside her chest. The hum in her arm wasn't fading. If anything, it seemed to tug her forward, each vibration syncing perfectly with the sound of the double's footsteps splashing in the puddles ahead. The wind shifted, carrying with it a faint sound, not the rustle of trees or the hiss of rain, but something softer, threaded through the air like a half-remembered melody. She couldn't place it, but it was pulling. She took a step, then another. The distance between them closed without her meaning to. Her double didn't glance over her shoulder, didn't acknowledge her presence at all. Yet, every time Sarah's boot hit the asphalt, the hum in her arm pulsed in perfect time with her steps, as though something was walking inside her. "You'll get used to it," her double said finally, still facing forward. Sarah's voice was low. "Used to what?" "To knowing something else is wearing your skin with you." The words lodged deep, heavy in her gut. She wanted to stop, but her legs didn't listen, not fully. The road ahead stretched in a straight, wet line, vanishing into the curtain of gray. Somewhere far off, she thought she saw movement, a tall, thin silhouette crossing from one side of the road to the other. Her double slowed slightly, the first sign of change in her pace. "You see it too," she said, and this time she did look back. The smile was gone. "Keep walking," she added. "It's not here for me." Sarah's breath caught. "Then who?" Her double didn't let her finish. "Don't ask, just keep your eyes on the road." But the silhouette was already gone, swallowed by the rain before Sarah could decide whether to obey. The hum in her arm changed, quicker now, erratic, as though it had recognized something it couldn't name. She glanced sideways at her double, searching for any hint of fear, but her face was unreadable again, every feature carefully smoothed over. If there was tension, it was buried too deep for Sarah to see. The road seemed to stretch longer with each step, the gray curtain ahead never quite getting closer. The air felt heavy enough to press on her shoulders, the rain warm now against her skin. A sound rose behind them, a faint rhythmic tapping, like fingertips drumming on glass. Sarah froze. The hum in her arm surged in sharp, uneven bursts, an almost panicked flutter. Her double stopped too, but didn't turn. "Don't look!" The tapping grew louder, closer. Sarah's chest tightened, and before she could stop herself, she whispered, "What happens if I do?" Her double's answer was flat. "It takes your face." The words sank into her like ice. She forced herself to stare straight ahead, her peripheral vision blurring with the strain of not glancing back. The tapping slowed. The air shifted, heavy and still, as though whatever was behind them was leaning in close enough to taste the breath between them. Then, so softly she almost missed it, a voice, her own voice, breathed against her ear. "You left me there." The voice wasn't an echo. It was alive, warm with accusation, the kind of tone that seeps into the marrow. Sarah's shoulders locked, every instinct screaming to turn, to see. Her double stepped forward, one slow, deliberate pace, and the hum in Sarah's arm surged in response, yanking her along like a hooked fish. "Walk," she said, her voice firm but not raised. "If you stop, it stays." Sarah obeyed, her legs stiff, every step a battle against the urge to glance over her shoulder. The tapping resumed, softer now, moving with them, keeping perfect pace. The rain muffled everything except that sound and the hum in her arm, the two rhythms weaving together until they felt almost intentional. Her double's voice cut through the wet air. "That's not it. It's you. Or what's left of you." Sarah's throat tightened. "The piece I left doesn't like being left," her double finished. She didn't look at Sarah when she spoke, eyes fixed forward as if the road itself might vanish if she blinked. "It will follow you, sometimes ahead, sometimes behind, but it can't touch you unless you give it permission." The tapping stopped. Sarah's breath came shallow, braced for it to start again. Instead, the voice, her voice, spoke once more, close enough that the words felt breathed into the shell of her ear. "I don't need permission." Something brushed her fingertips, cold, thin, deliberate. Sarah jerked her hand back, but there was nothing beside her, only the curtain of rain and the slick, empty road. Her double didn't slow. "Don't react. That's what it wants." But Sarah's pulse was already spiking against that deeper alien rhythm in her chest. The hum in her arm turned erratic, not in panic, but in recognition, like it was answering the cold touch. "I felt it," Sarah said, her voice low, almost shaking. Her double finally glanced at her, eyes sharp. "Then it's closer than I thought." She leaned in just slightly, her expression unreadable. "If it gets ahead of us, you run." Sarah swallowed hard. "Why ahead?" Her double's gaze flicked to the road stretching forward, the endless gray curtain. "Because then it's not following you anymore. It's leading you back." The hum in her arm deepened, vibrating hard enough to ache in her bones. Her fingers twitched on their own, a subtle pulling motion toward the space to her right. Out of the corner of her eye, something tall moved in the tree line, slow, deliberate, keeping perfect pace with them. She couldn't make out a face, but she knew without question that it was watching her, not her double. The rain seemed to dull in that moment, each drop stretching into slow motion as a thought slid unbidden into her head. Her voice again, but colder, quieter. "We can walk together. No one has to know." Her double's tone sharpened, as if she'd heard it too. "Don't answer it." But the thing in the trees was already stepping closer to the road. The figure emerged just far enough for the rain to catch on its outline. It was her height, her build, too exact to be anything but her. But the face was obscured, blurred at the edges like an unfinished sketch, the features shifting as though trying to settle on the right arrangement. The hum in Sarah's arm became a pull, sharp and insistent, each vibration a beckoning tug toward the thing in the tree line. Her double's voice was low but urgent. Keep moving. Don't break the line of the road. Sarah's feet hesitated anyway, the weight of the figure's presence dragging at her like a gravity all its own. The thing tilted its head, not in curiosity, but recognition. Its half-formed mouth curled into something that might have been a smile. In her mind, the voice slid in again, smoother now, more familiar. I can take the rest of you. You won't have to carry it anymore. Her chest tightened. The rest of me, she whispered before she could stop herself. Her double caught the words instantly. Don't speak to it. But it was too late. The blurred figure stepped fully out of the trees, and with each movement the rain seemed to bend around it. Its features sharpened as it came closer. Eyes, nose, mouth, until it was her face exactly, only cleaner, unmarked, untouched. Sarah realized with a jolt it was what she would have been if she'd never walked the road at all. Her double's hand brushed her elbow, subtle but grounding. That one doesn't want to lead you back, she murmured. It wants to keep you here. The other her stopped at the edge of the road. Its smile widened, and it reached out its hand. The rain seemed to hush around them, muting into a dull hiss. The outstretched hand was steady, fingers pale and smooth. Her fingers but untouched by anything the road or the mist had done to her. Sarah's own hand twitched, the hum in her arm synchronizing with the other's presence until it felt like her body was already leaning toward it. It would feel like going home, the voice inside her whispered. No hum, no weight, no thing walking with you. Her double moved subtly between them, not fully blocking the view but creating a sliver of distance. If you touch it, she said quietly, you'll stop being you. It's not giving you yourself back. It's taking the part that still remembers who that is. The figure's smile didn't falter. If anything, it softened, just enough to look almost kind. The rain on its hair slid away without soaking in, same as her double, same as everything that didn't belong entirely to this place. I'm not here to hurt you, it said in her voice, warm and calm. I'm here to keep you, so you don't have to go back and be half of something forever. The hum in her arm swelled, a low thrumming that felt like longing. Her breathing grew shallow, caught between the grounded presence of her double and the inviting stillness of the figure before her. You're tired, it continued, stepping closer. You're already leaning toward me. Let go and it stops. Her double's tone dropped to a warning. Sarah. The figure's fingers were inches from hers now. One step forward and she could take the hand. One step back and she might never hear the voice again. Sarah's weight shifted forward before she even decided to move. The hum in her arm deepened into a steady, aching vibration, the kind that felt less like a warning and more like surrender. Her fingertips twitched toward the other, hers outstretched hand. Her double stepped closer, her voice taut. Once you touch it, you won't know the difference. You'll think you chose this. The other her smile widened just slightly, enough to feel like it was aimed past her double, meant only for Sarah. Or maybe you've already chosen, and you're just catching up to it. Sarah's pulse thundered in her ears. The rain between her and the figure looked almost parted, the space narrowing until it felt impossible not to cross. You said you were tired, the other her murmured, voice threading into Sarah's head without touching her ears. You said you wanted the weight gone. I am that. I'm you before all of this. I'm what you lost. The ache in Sarah's chest spiked, not sharp, but deep, like something inside was reaching for that stillness. She could almost remember it, like a smell from childhood, familiar but impossible to hold. Her double's tone turned sharp, almost desperate. "That's not you anymore. That's what's left over when you stop fighting." The other her extended her hand farther, palm up, fingers curling in a silent invitation. Sarah's boot shifted on the wet asphalt. One step, and her fingertips brushed the others. The hum in her arm stopped. The rain went silent, and the road, everything, folded in on itself. The folding wasn't like falling or spinning. It was like being pressed flat, every layer of her pulled into a single thin moment where no time passed at all. When the world unfolded again, the road was gone. She stood in a vast, still plain under a sky the color of tarnished silver. There was no wind, no rain, no sound but the faint crunch of something brittle beneath her boots. The ground was covered in shards, like glass, but softer, each piece reflecting flashes of scenes she couldn't quite focus on. The other her stood only a few feet away, still holding her hand. No smile now. Just watching her with an unsettling calm, like this was the place they were always meant to end up. Sarah tried to pull her hand back, but the other her's grip was impossibly firm, no pain, just an unyielding hold that felt older than the moment it began. "What is this?" Sarah asked, her voice too loud in the stillness. The other her glanced down at the ground, at the glimmering fragments beneath their feet. "Pieces. You've been leaving them behind for longer than you realize. Every time you choose, every time you let something go, it comes here." Sarah shifted her weight, and one of the shards cracked under her heel. Inside its fractured surface, she caught a flash of herself, standing on the road in sunlight, hair dry, eyes unmarked by the weight she carried now. The image vanished before she could really hold on to it. Her stomach knotted. "Why bring me here?" The other her finally let go of her hand, but the hum in Sarah's arm didn't return. "Because you can't carry all of yourself anymore. You've already given away too much, and the rest of you is fraying." Sarah looked around. The plain stretched on forever, littered with countless shards, each one catching some sliver of her she couldn't quite name. "These are mine." "Yes," her double said, "but not all of them can go back with you. Some won't fit anymore." Sarah felt a cold weight settle in her chest. "And you get to decide which ones I keep?" Her double's expression didn't change. "No, you do, but you won't like the cost." The air shifted then, and far across the plain something began moving toward them, slow, deliberate, stepping over shards without breaking them. Sarah squinted into the distance, but the silver sky blurred the figure, turning its edges into a wavering shadow. Whatever it was tall, taller than the crooked thing, and it moved with a precision that made her skin crawl. Her double didn't look at it. She kept her gaze fixed on Sarah, as though the approaching figure was irrelevant. You can wait until it gets here, or you can choose now. But once it arrives, the choice won't be yours anymore. The shards underfoot seemed to hum faintly now, not like the vibration in her arm, but a softer, irregular note, as if each piece was trying to call her attention in turn. Some pulsed brighter, flashing fragments of scenes she recognized. Others remained dull and cold, refusing to show anything at all. Sarah crouched and touched one of the brighter shards. Heat bloomed under her fingertips, and the reflection shifted into motion. She saw herself laughing, real laughter, in a kitchen with sunlight streaming through the window, a mug in her hands. She didn't recognize the place, but the feeling punched through her chest so sharply it almost hurt. She looked up at her double. "If I take it, what happens?" Her double stepped closer, her voice even. "You keep that piece, but to make room you have to give one up." Sarah's eyes flicked back to the distant figure. It was closer now, tall enough that its head seemed to cut into the silver sky. She couldn't tell if it was walking or gliding, "And if I choose wrong?" she asked. Her double's expression shifted just slightly into something that might have been pity. "There is no wrong. There's only what you can live with, and what you can't." The hum in the shards swelled, growing almost frantic. The figure was close enough now that she could see its arms, too long, too thin, dangling nearly to the ground. Sarah's breath quickened. The figure's slow, deliberate steps made no sound on the shards, but each movement seemed to ripple through the plane, the reflections in the glassy fragments warping as it passed. She tore her gaze away and looked at the shard, still warm in her hand. The sunlight in it seemed to pulse faintly, almost urging her to take it. But then she noticed another piece just to her left, faintly glowing. When she touched it, the reflection bloomed into something else entirely. She was standing in the mist, unafraid, the crooked thing's shadow behind her like a shield instead of a threat. Her double's eyes flicked to the shard in her left hand. "That one is heavier than it looks." Sarah narrowed her gaze. "Why? What's in it?" Her double tilted her head slightly, her tone neutral. "It's not what's in it, it's what it replaces." The approaching figure loomed closer, its body stretching in ways that made it hard to measure the distance. It felt like it had been walking for hours and seconds all at once. The shards beneath Sarah's boots began to vibrate in sync with her heartbeat. She could feel them tugging at her, each offering something different. A memory, a version of herself, a truth she hadn't known she'd lost. The warm kitchen shard pulsed in her right hand. The shadow in the mist shard burned cold in her left. Her double's voice was quiet but sharp now. "Choose." Sarah's chest tightened. "And if I drop them both?" Her double glanced at the looming figure, now close enough that its head tilted in slow, unnatural increments, as though it was smelling the air. "Then it chooses for you." Something inside her pulsed, once hard, and for the first time the figure turned its faceless head directly toward her. The faceless head locked onto her, and the plane seemed to still entirely. No shimmer from the shards, no hum beneath her boots, no breath in her chest. Only that impossible gaze, fixed and absolute. It began moving faster, not running, but crossing the space between them in impossible strides, each step folding the distance until Sarah could see the place where a face should have been. Smooth, pale, featureless, yet somehow radiating intent. The shards in her hands flared, one warm, one cold, as if seeking for dominance. The hum of the plane rushed back all at once, overwhelming, shards around her sparking in rapid flashes of other lives she could have had. Other versions of her that could still exist. Her double stepped closer, voice low and urgent. "If it gets here before you decide, it will take everything. You won't even know you were meant to choose." Sarah's pulse thudded, uneven. She looked down at the kitchen shard in her right hand. Comfort, safety, a self that felt real and whole. Then at the shadow in the mist shard in her left, strength, defiance, a self that didn't flinch at the darkness. The figure was nearly upon her now, its long arms reaching outward, the tips of its fingers almost brushing the nearest shards without touching them. Her double's voice cut sharp through the hum. "Sarah, now!" Her chest burned with the weight of the decision. And then, she dropped one shard and crushed the other in her hand. The plane shattered, the silver sky ripped open, and the figure's arms closed around,